She woke up in a foreign city with no passport, no money, and a note from the husband who promised this trip would save their marriage. It didn't. It was designed to erase her. But he made one critical mistake. He abandoned her in a city that belonged to someone else. If you want to see how far a woman can fall before she learns to stand on entirely different ground, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The clock on the nightstand read 4:47 a.m. when Alara Vance opened her eyes to the wrong kind of silence. Not the silence of sleep, not the comfortable dark of a shared bedroom where breath mingles with familiarity. This was the silence of absence, of space deliberately emptied. She blinked against the dim light filtering through unfamiliar curtains, floor-to-ceiling panels of sheer fabric that she didn't recognize, didn't remember closing. Her hand reached instinctively to the left side of the bed. Cold sheets. Smooth. Untouched. Adrian wasn't there. Her pulse didn't quicken yet. 12 years of marriage had taught her to manage her reactions, to wait before feeling, to assess before responding. She sat up slowly, the silk of an expensive nightgown sliding against her skin. When had she put this on? She remembered the plane, remembered the car ride through Seoul's neon-streaked streets, Adrian's hand on her knee, his voice low and reassuring as he pointed out landmarks she was too tired to absorb. Remembered the hotel lobby, all marble and muted gold, and the elevator ride up to a floor number she hadn't registered. Then nothing, or rather, nothing clear. Just fragments. A glass of wine. Adrian's smile, his hands on her shoulders, guiding her toward the bed. Just rest, he'd said. We'll start fresh in the morning. But it wasn't morning. It was the hollow gap between night and dawn, and she was alone. Alara stood. Her legs felt strange. Not weak, but disconnected, like her body was operating on a slight delay. She crossed the room toward the bathroom, expecting light, expecting the familiar shape of Adrian's toiletry bag next to hers. The counter was empty except for her things. Her chest tightened, but she breathed through it. Control first. Panic later, if necessary. She turned and surveyed the suite with fresh eyes. It was vast, 2 rooms separated by a sliding partition that had been left half open. Sitting area with a low sofa and glass coffee table. Desk by the window, minibar built into the wall. Everything pristine, everything untouched, everything hers alone. On the desk, a single folded piece of hotel stationery. She didn't want to read it, didn't want to give it power by acknowledging it. But her feet carried her across the carpet, and her fingers lifted the paper before her mind could intervene. Alara, I know this isn't what we discussed. I know you'll be confused, maybe angry, but I need you to understand this is for both of us. We've been circling the same problems for too long, and being in the same space wasn't helping. This distance is necessary. I've arranged for the suite through the end of the month. Everything you need is here. I'll be in touch once I've had time to think clearly. Please don't try to contact me before then. Trust the process. A. She read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. Her hands didn't shake. That would come later. Right now, her mind was cataloging, sorting, processing with the ruthless efficiency she had developed in a marriage built on reading subtext. Trust the process. What process? What plan had he constructed that required her isolation in a foreign country? She set the note down carefully, precisely, and crossed to the closet. Her suitcase was there, unpacked. Her clothes hung in neat rows. Blouses, dresses, pants she didn't remember bringing. Too many clothes for 2 weeks. In the drawers, undergarments, and sleepwear, all folded with care she hadn't provided. He'd unpacked for her while she, slept, passed out? The wine. The glass he'd handed her in the room, his smile easy, his voice soothing. Just to help you relax after the flight. Her stomach turned. She moved to her purse, hanging on a hook by the door. Wallet, present. Credit cards, present. Phone, present, but powered down. She turned it on and waited through the agonizing boot sequence. No service. International plan not activated. Of course, she checked the wallet again. Cash. About $200 worth of Korean won. Enough for meals, maybe a few days of basics. Not enough for a flight home. Not enough for anything that mattered. Her passport. The realization hit with physical force. She tore through the purse, fingers clumsy now, control fracturing, checked every pocket, every fold, returned to the closet, to the drawers, to the nightstand. Checked the safe. Empty. Door hanging open in mute confirmation. Her passport was gone. Adrian had taken it. The room felt smaller suddenly, the luxury oppressive. 5-star walls closing in with the soft, suffocating pressure of a trap designed not to look like one. She sat on the edge of the bed, forcing air into her lungs in measured counts. 4 in, hold, 4 out. A technique learned from the therapist Adrian had suggested she see 3 years ago, when she'd first voiced concerns about the distance growing between them. "You're overthinking," he'd said then. "You always do. That's why you're anxious." She'd believed him, had tried to be less, think less, question less, had tried to become smaller so the marriage could feel bigger. The phone suddenly buzzed in her hand, a single notification breaking through despite the lack of service. Hotel Wi-Fi connecting automatically. A message from Adrian. "I know you found the note by now. I need you to stay calm. This is temporary. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Use the time to rest, to reflect. We'll talk when I'm ready." Her fingers moved before thought could stop them. "Where's my passport?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Somewhere safe. I can't have you making impulsive decisions right now. You're not thinking clearly." Something cold and bright ignited in her chest. Not rage, not yet. Something more surgical. "You drugged me." The dots took longer this time. "I gave you something to help you sleep. You were exhausted. Don't be dramatic. You stole my passport and left me in a foreign country. I left you in a 5-star hotel with everything you need. Stop acting like a victim." Her breath came shallow now, but her hands were steady. 12 years had taught her this too, how to function while fracturing, how to perform composure while the ground dissolved beneath her. "I want my passport. I want to come home." "No." One word. No justification, no softening. "No? You'll stay until I decide we're ready to talk. Use the time productively. I'll check in when appropriate." The dots vanished. The screen showed he'd gone offline. Alara stared at the phone in her hand, this useless rectangle of glass that connected her to nothing, to no one who would help. Her contacts were all back home. Her friends, the few she'd maintained despite Adrian's subtle discouragements, would assume she was on vacation, enjoying romantic Seoul with her attentive husband. Her family would think the same. No one would look for her because no one knew she was lost. The panic arrived then, sharp and total. Her chest constricted, her vision tunneled. She doubled over, phone clattering to the floor as her hands gripped her knees. Breathe, count, 4 in. But the air wouldn't come properly. Her body rejected the calm, rejected the control she'd maintained for so long it had become identity. She was alone. Truly, completely alone. In a city she didn't know, speaking a language she didn't speak, with no documents and no way out. And the man who had done this to her, who had systematically removed every tool she might use to save herself, thought he was teaching her something, thought he was correcting her. The rage came then. Not hot, not explosive, cold and clarifying and absolute. She straightened slowly, retrieving the phone from where it had fallen. Her breathing steadied not because she'd mastered it, but because fury had given her something stronger than panic to hold on to. Adrian had made a critical error in his careful plan. He'd assumed that isolation would break her, that dependency would make her compliant, that given enough time in this beautiful cage, she would accept her place in it. He'd forgotten, or perhaps never known, that she had spent 12 years learning to read him, to anticipate, to adapt, to survive in the small, quiet ways that women survive marriages slowly killing them. He'd given her weapons without realizing it. Every manipulation had been a lesson, every control tactic a blueprint, and now he'd removed himself from the equation entirely. Alara walked to the window and pulled back the curtains. Seoul stretched below her in the pre-dawn gray, a city of 10 million strangers, none of whom owed her anything, none of whom knew her name, but none of whom knew Adrian's either. She had 2 weeks, maybe 3, not to wait, not to reflect, to disappear in a different way entirely. San, the American embassy opened at 9 a.m. Alara knew this because she'd spent the hours between dawn and daylight researching every option available to a stranded citizen. The hotel's business center had been empty at 6 a.m., the computers unlocked, the Wi-Fi mercifully stable. She'd learned about emergency passport replacement, about the documentation required, police report for theft, proof of citizenship, passport photos, fees. She'd learned about the timeline, minimum 5 business days, often longer depending on verification processes. She'd also learned about the questions they would ask. How did you lose your passport? Where's your husband now? Why didn't you report this immediately? She had no good answers, nothing that wouldn't sound like what it was. A woman abandoned by a controlling spouse who had carefully constructed a situation with no clear crime, no obvious villain, just a marriage dissolving in a foreign country with one party holding all the cards. But she had to try. She dressed carefully, dark slacks, a simple blouse, minimal jewelry, the clothes of a woman who needed to be taken seriously. The armor of competence. She pulled her hair into a low ponytail and studied her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles under her eyes, a tightness around her mouth that hadn't been there a year ago. When had she started looking so tired? When had she started looking so much like someone who accepted being tired? She turned away from the mirror and gathered what little she had: phone, wallet, hotel key. No purse. She'd leave the purse here. Too easy to grab, to lose, to have taken. Everything essential went in her pockets. The lobby was quiet at 8 a.m. A few business travelers checking out. A couple having breakfast in the restaurant visible through glass doors. The concierge desk staffed by a young man with careful English and a professional smile. Good morning, Mrs. Cross. How may I assist you? She hated that name. Hated how automatically she'd accepted it 12 years ago, never questioning what she was trading. But she used it now because it was the name on the hotel reservation, the name attached to Adrian's credit card paying for this cage. I need directions to the American Embassy. The young man's smile didn't falter, but something shifted in his eyes. A calculation. Of course. Is there a problem? Something we can help with? No problem. Just need to take care of some paperwork. He didn't believe her. She could see it. But he pulled up a map on his computer and printed directions anyway, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. The nearest subway station is 3 blocks east, line 3 to Ongguk Station, then a short walk. Very simple. But if you prefer, I can arrange a car. Subway is fine. Of course. He handed her the printout, and his voice dropped slightly. Mrs. Cross, if you need any assistance, anything at all, the hotel is here to help. We want all our guests to feel safe. The kindness in his tone nearly undid her. She managed a nod, a tight smile, and left before her composure could crack. The Seoul morning hit her in a wave of sound and movement. Cars streaming past in disciplined lanes, pedestrians moving with purpose. Signs in Hangul that her exhausted brain couldn't begin to decipher. She clutched the directions and walked east, counting blocks, focusing on the simple mechanics of putting one foot in front of the other. The subway station swallowed her into fluorescent brightness and the press of bodies. She bought a card from a machine that accepted her cash, followed the flow of commuters downstairs and through turnstiles, onto a platform that smelled like metal and human proximity. When the train arrived, she wedged herself into a corner and held onto a pole, letting the rhythm of acceleration and braking numb her mind. Stations passed. Ongguk arrived. She emerged into daylight disoriented, directions already half forgotten. A woman standing near the exit noticed her confusion. Lost? Alara looked up, surprised by the English. The woman was maybe 30, fashionably dressed, carrying a leather bag that probably cost more than Alara's entire wardrobe. American Embassy, Alara managed. The woman's expression shifted. Not pity, exactly, but recognition, like she'd seen this particular kind of loss before. 2 blocks north, then left. Big building, American flag. Hard to miss. Thank you. The woman hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. If you need anything else while you're here, I work in expat services. We help people navigate situations. Alara took the card reflexively. Jinseo Park, International Relocation Specialist. A phone number, an email address. Thank you, she said again, and the woman nodded, melting back into the crowd before Alara could ask what kind of situations she meant. 2 blocks north, then left. The embassy rose exactly where promised, concrete and glass and the flag snapping in the morning wind. Security checkpoints, metal detectors, Forms to fill out before she could even speak to anyone. Nature of visit. Emergency passport replacement. Reason for replacement? Lost/stolen. Current location? Grand Hyatt. Seoul. Traveling with alone. That last word sat heavy on the form. Alone. The truth of it stark in black ink. An hour passed in waiting. Then another. Other Americans cycled through. Tourists who'd been pickpocketed, business travelers with damaged documents, students studying abroad. Normal problems. Solvable problems. Finally, her name. The consular officer was a woman in her 40s with graying hair and eyes that had seen every version of crisis Americans could create abroad. She gestured Alara into a small office and closed the door. "Mrs. Cross, I understand you need an emergency passport. Can you walk me through what happened?" Alara had rehearsed this, had planned exactly what to say to avoid sounding unstable, paranoid, dramatic. "My husband and I are here on vacation. I woke up this morning and my passport was missing from our hotel safe. I've searched everywhere." "Did you file a police report?" "Not yet. I wanted to come here first." "You'll need that for the replacement process. Have you contacted your husband? Is he helping you look?" The question landed like a trap. Alara kept her voice level. "We're having some difficulties. He's not at the hotel right now." The officer's expression didn't change, but her pen stopped moving. "I see. When do you expect him back?" "I don't know." "Mrs. Cross." The woman set down her pen. "I need to ask you directly. Do you feel safe?" The question cracked something open. Alara's throat tightened. "I don't have my passport. I don't have access to our bank accounts. He won't tell me where he is or when he's coming back. He told me to wait, so no, I don't feel safe." The officer was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled a different form from her drawer. "There are resources available for American citizens in situations like yours. Shelters, legal assistance. We can help you get home." "I don't need a shelter. I need my passport so I can leave." "I understand, but the process takes time. At minimum 5 business days, and that's if everything processes smoothly. Do you have somewhere safe to stay in the meantime?" "The hotel. He's paying for it. And you're comfortable staying there?" Was she? The suite felt like evidence now, like a crime scene designed to look like luxury. But what choice did she have? "I'll manage." The officer studied her, and Alara saw the calculation happening. How much to push? How much this woman could afford to care about one more complicated marriage imploding on foreign soil. "All right, let's start the paperwork. I'll need 2 passport photos, and you'll need to file that police report today. Bring me the documentation, and we can expedite as much as possible." "Thank you." "Mrs. Cross." The officer's voice softened slightly. "Whatever you decide to do about your marriage, make sure you decide. Don't let circumstances decide for you." Alara nodded, not trusting her voice. The photos took another hour. The police report, another 3. By the time she emerged back into Seoul afternoon, the sun was slanting low, and her body was screaming for food, for rest, for any kind of mercy. She found a small restaurant near the station, a place with plastic menus and photos of food she couldn't identify. Pointed at something that looked like soup. Paid with cash. Sat in a corner booth and ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Her phone buzzed. "Adrian, how was your day?" The casualness of it, the audacity. She typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on productive. "Good. I'm glad you're using the time well. When are you coming back?" "Not yet. Soon. That's not an answer." The dots appeared, then vanished. He'd logged off again. Alara set the phone face down on the table and finished her soup. The restaurant was filling with dinner customers, office workers, couples, a family with 2 small children who shrieked with laughter over something Alara couldn't see. Normal lives, normal problems. She paid and left, stepping back into the street as evening settled over the city. She should go back to the hotel. Should rest. Should conserve energy for the days ahead. But the thought of that suite, those pristine walls, that empty bed, that note still sitting on the desk, made her skin crawl. She walked instead. No direction, no plan, just motion. Block after block of neon and noise, of shop fronts and restaurants, of Seoul living its life around her like she was a ghost. She found herself near the Han River as full dark fell. The path along the water was dotted with runners, cyclists, couples walking hand in hand. She sat on a bench and watched the city lights reflect on the black surface, fracturing into pieces every time the water moved. 12 years ago, Adrian had proposed on a riverbank. Different river, different country, different version of herself. Younger, softer, convinced that his confidence was strength, his control was protection. She'd said yes without hesitation. Had meant it. Had believed in the story they were writing together. When had it become his story alone? When had she become just a character he moved around his narrative? "You look lost." The voice came from her left, a man standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, expression neutral. Not threatening, not friendly, just observing. Alara tensed. "I'm fine." Americans always say that, even when they're not. His English was perfect, accent barely present. "First time in Seoul?" "Yes." "Alone?" The question held weight. She met his eyes, dark, assessing, giving nothing away. "Why do you ask?" He smiled slightly. "Because people who aren't alone usually don't sit by the river at 9 p.m., looking like the world ended." "Maybe I like rivers." "Maybe." He didn't move closer, didn't push, just stood there, waiting. Alara should leave, should walk away from this stranger, this potential danger, this unknown variable. But something in his stillness felt like recognition, like he saw exactly what she was, untethered, furious, calculating her next move. "There's a place near here," he said quietly. "Private club. People go when they need to think clearly. No pressure, no expectations, just space." "I don't need a club." "No, you need options." He pulled a card from his pocket. Black, minimal design, just an address in both English and Hangul. "If you change your mind." He set it on the bench between them and walked away before she could respond, melting into the riverside foot traffic like he'd never been there at all. Alara picked up the card, turned it over. Nothing on the back, just an address in a part of the city she didn't know. She should throw it away. Should go back to the hotel, lock the door, wait for her passport like a good wife who trusted the process. Instead, she pulled out her phone and searched the address. No results, no reviews, no website. "Private," he'd said. She looked at the river, at her reflection caught in the dark water, a woman who barely recognized herself anymore. Then she stood, pocketed the card, and walked back toward the subway. Not to the hotel, to the address. Because Adrian had made one critical miscalculation when he left her here. He'd assumed she had nowhere else to go. The address led to a neighborhood that didn't appear in tourist guides. Alara emerged from the subway into streets that felt older, quieter, the kind of quiet that came from money. Understanding it didn't need to announce itself. No neon here, no crowds, just clean sidewalks, architectural lighting that suggested rather than illuminated, and buildings that revealed nothing about what happened inside them. She walked 3 blocks checking the card against street signs, her pulse climbing with each turn. This was insane. Following a stranger's directions to an unmarked location in a city she didn't know. Every survival instinct she possessed screamed at her to turn back. But the alternative was the hotel suite, was waiting, was accepting that Adrian's plan was the only plan that mattered. The building materialized exactly where the card promised. 4 stories of dark glass and steel that could have been luxury apartments or corporate offices, or absolutely nothing at all. No sign, no indicator of purpose. Just a single door at street level with a brass plate beside it bearing a symbol she didn't recognize. Alara stood on the sidewalk, card in hand, heart hammering against her ribs. The door opened before she could decide. A woman stepped out, early 30s, elegant in the way Seoul seemed to breed effortlessly, wearing a black dress that probably cost what Alara used to make in a month before she'd stopped working, stopped having her own income, stopped being anything except Adrian's wife. The woman's eyes flicked to the card in Alara's hand. "First time? I don't even know what this place is." "It's exactly what you need it to be." The woman held the door. "Or you can leave. Choice is yours." Everything was a choice now. That was the problem. Too many choices after 12 years of having none. Alara stepped inside. The interior contradicted the exterior's restraint. Warmth instead of sterility. Wood and leather and low lighting that felt like expensive privacy. A small reception area with a single desk, behind which sat a man who looked up from his computer with the kind of smile that was polite without being welcoming. "Good evening. Do you have a referral?" Alara held out the card. The man glanced at it, then at her, his expression shifting into something more attentive. "I see. One moment, please." He lifted a phone, spoke quietly in Korean. Alara caught her own breathing, too fast, too shallow. She forced it slower. 4 counts. Control. The woman who'd held the door had disappeared. Alara was alone in the reception area, surrounded by art that probably had meaning she lacked context to understand. Abstract pieces, sculptures, nothing comforting. "This way, please." A different woman had appeared. Older, 50s maybe, with silver threading through black hair pulled into a severe knot. She gestured toward a hallway, and Alara followed because stopping now felt worse than continuing. They walked past closed doors. Alara heard nothing from behind them. No music, no conversation. Just the whisper of her own footsteps on hardwood and the measured click of the woman's heels. At the end of the hall, a door stood open. The room beyond was small but meticulously designed, a sitting area with 2 leather chairs facing each other across a low table, a bar cart in the corner, window overlooking the street, curtains drawn but not closed, neutral, private, safe in a way that felt deliberate. "Someone will be with you shortly. Please make yourself comfortable." The woman left, closing the door with a soft click that felt more absolute than a slam. Alara didn't sit. Couldn't. She moved to the window instead, pulling the curtain back just enough to see the street below. Empty. A single car passing. The city existing somewhere beyond this pocket of careful silence. What was she doing here? The door opened behind her. She turned. The man who entered wasn't the stranger from the river. He was older, late 50s, gray at the temples, wearing a suit that fit like it had been made for him because it had. His presence filled the room without effort, without movement, just existed in a way that made everything else feel less substantial. Mrs. Cross. Not a question. He knew who she was. "My name is Kang Min-jun. Please, sit." Alara's throat tightened. "How do you know my name?" "Your hotel reservation is flagged in several databases. When you entered this building, our system recognized you." He moved to one of the chairs, settling into it with the ease of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Sit. I won't ask twice." It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Alara sat in the opposite chair, her body rigid, every muscle prepared for flight. Min-jun poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter on the table, slid one toward her. "You don't have to drink it, but you look like you need it." "I don't understand what this place is." "This is a private club for people who require discretion. Business dealings that prefer shadow to light. Conversations that can't happen in public. Arrangements that benefit from careful handling." He sipped his drink. "We exist in the margins of legitimacy. Not illegal, not entirely legal. Useful." "I'm not looking for anything illegal." "No, you're looking for options. That's why you came." His eyes held hers, dark, assessing, missing nothing. "Your husband abandoned you in Seoul 3 days ago, took your passport, left you in a hotel suite you can't afford, and he can stop paying for whenever he chooses. You went to the embassy today, filed for emergency documents, but that takes time you may not have." The glass shook in Alara's hand. She set it down carefully. "How do you know all that?" "Because knowledge is currency in my world, and you became interesting the moment you were marked as vulnerable in a city that doesn't tolerate vulnerability well." He leaned back. "The man who gave you that card, he works for me. He identified you as someone who might need what we offer." "Which is what?" "Leverage." The word hung between them like a blade. Alara's pulse hammered. "I don't have anything to leverage. I don't have money. I don't have—" "You have information." Min-jun set his glass down. "Your husband, Adrian Cross, investment banker, works for Meridian Capital out of New York, specializes in international asset management." He paused. "And has been moving money through Seoul in ways that suggest he's not just here on vacation." The room tilted slightly. Alara gripped the arm of the chair. "What are you talking about?" "Your husband has been establishing accounts with local institutions, shell companies, routing transactions through intermediaries designed to obscure origin points." Min-jun's tone didn't change. Still conversational, still casual. It's money laundering, not particularly sophisticated, but effective enough to avoid immediate scrutiny. That's not possible. It's documented. Would you like to see the records? No. Yes. She didn't know. Her mind was fracturing trying to process this. Adrian. Careful, controlled Adrian, who triple-checked restaurant bills and maintained spreadsheets for household expenses. Adrian, who lectured her about fiscal responsibility when she bought groceries he deemed too expensive. That Adrian was laundering money? Why are you telling me this? Because your husband's carelessness has created a problem. Minjun leaned forward slightly. Some of the money he's moving belongs to people who don't appreciate loose ends, people I do business with, people who now view him as a liability. So what? You want me to, what? Help you find him? No, I know exactly where he is. He's in Busan. Has been since he left you. Minjun's expression didn't change. What I'm offering you is a choice. I don't understand. Your husband is going to face consequences for his actions. That's inevitable. But you can walk away from this clean, or you can be part of the solution and benefit from it. Alara stood abruptly, chair scraping against wood. I'm not helping you hurt him. I'm not asking you to hurt him. I'm asking you to do nothing. Minjun remained seated, unruffled. Your husband stole money. He will be held accountable. Whether you intervene or not doesn't change that outcome. But if you choose not to intervene, if you choose to let events unfold naturally, there are benefits I can provide. Like what? Protection, resources, a passport that doesn't take 5 business days, a bank account in your name only. He tilted his head. Freedom. The word landed like a punch. Freedom. When was the last time she'd even conceptualized that as possible? You want me to betray him? I want you to stop protecting him. Minjun stood now, moving to the bar cart, poured himself another drink. For 12 years, you've made yourself smaller, quieter, more manageable. And in return, he's controlled every aspect of your life until he didn't need you anymore. Now he's left you with nothing while he runs from consequences in another city. Tell me, what exactly do you owe him? Alara's hands were shaking. She shoved them into her pockets. I don't owe you anything either. No, you don't. Which is why I'm giving you time to think. He returned to his chair. Go back to your hotel. Consider what I've said. If you decide you want to help yourself, come back. If not, he shrugged. The world will continue turning, with or without you in it. And if I go to the police? Tell them about this place? Tell them what? That a businessman had a conversation with you in a private club? That I offered you theoretical assistance in a difficult time? Minjun smiled slightly. Mrs. Cross, I exist in spaces the police can't touch. Your husband, however, does not. If you involve authorities, you'll destroy what little remains of your life together. Is that what you want? She didn't know. Didn't know anything anymore except that the ground beneath her feet had been unstable for years, and she'd just been too afraid to acknowledge it. I need to leave. Of course, Minjun gestured to the door. Someone will show you out. Alara crossed the room on legs that felt detached from her body, reached for the door handle. Mrs. Cross. She stopped, didn't turn. Your husband chose to leave you powerless. I'm offering you a different choice. Think carefully about which version of yourself you want to be. She left without responding. The same woman who'd brought her in appeared in the hallway, leading her back through the labyrinth of closed doors and careful silence. The receptionist didn't look up as she passed. The door to the street opened soundlessly. Then she was outside, gulping air that tasted like freedom and terror in equal measure. The subway ride back was a blur. Alara sat in a corner seat, staring at nothing, her mind replaying the conversation in fragments. Money laundering. Busan. People who didn't appreciate loose ends. Adrian. Her husband, whom she'd trusted, whom she'd reshaped herself to accommodate, who'd been lying about everything. Or was Minjun lying? Was this whole thing a setup? Some kind of elaborate con targeting vulnerable foreign women? But he'd known too much. Details about Adrian's work she'd never mentioned to anyone. The embassy visit, the hotel. How did he know? Her phone buzzed. Adrian. Everything okay? You've been quiet. The audacity. The sheer audacity of asking if she was okay while hiding in Busan, laundering money, leaving her stranded in Seoul. She typed, "Where are you? Why?" Just answer the question, still working through some things. "Why are you asking? Are you in Seoul?" The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "What's going on, Alara? You're acting paranoid. Answer the question." "I'm traveling for work. I told you I needed space. Stop interrogating me." Not a denial, not an answer, just deflection dressed as offense. Alara's hands trembled around the phone. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw the device against the subway wall and watch it shatter, wanted to hurt him the way he'd hurt her. Instead, she wrote, "When are you coming back? When I'm ready. Stop pushing." The phone went dark. He'd blocked her. Blocked her. Alara sat in the subway car surrounded by strangers, staring at the screen that showed nothing, feeling something inside her chest crack clean through. 12 years. 12 years she'd given him, and he'd blocked her like she was spam, like she was a problem to be managed and dismissed. The hotel suite felt like a tomb when she returned. Alara moved through it mechanically, showered, changed, climbed into bed, stared at the ceiling until the sun rose and her eyes burned with exhaustion she couldn't convert to sleep. At 9 a.m., she went back to the embassy, checked on her passport application. Everything processing normally. 5 business days, probably 6 given the backlog. 6 days of this limbo. 6 days of waiting for permission to leave a situation Adrian had created. She left the embassy and walked. No destination, just movement. Found herself in a district full of luxury shops, designers she recognized from magazines Adrian's colleagues' wives read. Women gliding through glass doors carrying bags that cost more than her monthly grocery budget used to be. One of them brushed past Alara, speaking rapid Korean into a phone, and something in her laugh, bright and careless and utterly certain of her place in the world, made Alara want to scream. She kept walking, found a park, sat on a bench and watched mothers with small children, old men playing what looked like chess, teenagers skipping school to sprawl on the grass, normal people living normal lives where husbands didn't abandon them in foreign countries, and crime bosses didn't offer freedom in exchange for betrayal. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but the possibility it might be the embassy, some update on her case, made her thumb slide across the screen. Mrs. Cross. Not the embassy. Minjun's voice, calm as still water. "I hope I'm not interrupting. How did you get this number?" "The same way I got everything else. Information, Mrs. Cross. It's remarkably easy to obtain when you know where to look." A pause. "Have you thought about my offer?" "I don't want anything to do with whatever you're planning. I'm not planning anything. Your husband already did that. I'm simply managing consequences." "By doing what? What exactly happens to him?" "That depends on how much he's stolen and how cooperative he is when confronted." Minjun's tone remained conversational. "At minimum, he'll lose everything. His accounts will be seized, his reputation destroyed. He may face criminal charges if the authorities become involved." "And you want me to just... what? Stand by and watch? I want you to stop acting like his destruction has to be yours." The words came sharper now. "You're not married to him anymore, not in any way that matters. He severed that bond when he took your passport and left. You owe him nothing, so stop pretending his consequences should be your burden. It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple. You're choosing to make it complicated because 12 years of conditioning taught you that your value exists in relation to him. It doesn't." A beat of silence. "Come back to the club tonight. 8 p.m. See something that might change your perspective." "See what?" "Your husband, making deals with people who will kill him if he fails to deliver." The line went dead. Alara stared at the phone, pulse hammering. He was bluffing. Had to be. Adrian couldn't be involved with people like that. He was careful, meticulous, risk-averse to the point of paralysis. Except he'd drugged her, stolen her passport, left her in a foreign country with no resources. That was risk. That was criminal. What else had he done that she didn't know about? The day crawled past. Alara tried to eat and couldn't, tried to rest and couldn't, sat in the hotel suite staring at walls, at her phone, at the door Adrian had walked through 3 nights ago like it was nothing. At 7:30 p.m., she showered and dressed. Black pants, dark blouse, clothes that could disappear into shadow. At 7:45, she left the hotel. At 8, she walked through the door of the private club. The same receptionist looked up, unsurprised. Third floor, room 7. Elara took the stairs because waiting for an elevator felt impossible. Third floor, door marked with a discreet 7. She knocked. "Come in." The room was different from the first, larger, with a wall of glass overlooking the street. Minjun stood by the window, backlit by city lights. Another man sat in a chair, younger, maybe 40, with the build of someone who'd done violence and would do it again without hesitation. "Mrs. Cross? Thank you for coming." Minjun gestured to the window. "We're waiting for someone. Shouldn't be long." "Who?" "Your husband." Elara's stomach dropped. "What?" "He has a meeting across the street, second building, 4th floor, the office with lights on." Minjun handed her a pair of binoculars. "See for yourself." Her hands shook, taking them. She raised the binoculars to her eyes, adjusted focus. The building across the street sharpened, office windows, most dark. But on the 4th floor, one glowed. Movement inside, a figure crossing the room. Adrian, her husband. Alive. Well, wearing the blue shirt she'd ironed for him a month ago. Talking to someone out of view, gesturing, laughing. He looked fine, better than fine, relaxed. While she'd been falling apart in a hotel suite, he'd been conducting business across town, smiling, living his life. "What is this?" Her voice came out strangled. "Watch." Adrian sat down. Another man entered the frame, Asian, well-dressed, carrying a briefcase. They shook hands. The man opened the briefcase. Even from this distance, even through binoculars, Elara could see the stacks of cash. Adrian counted it. Actually counted it like he was at a bank teller window. Then nodded, pulled something from his jacket, a folder, passed it across the desk. The transaction took less than 5 minutes. Then they were shaking hands again. Adrian left first. Elara lowered the binoculars, her hands numb. "What was that?" "Payment for services rendered. Your husband has been facilitating transactions between American investors and Korean entities who prefer to operate outside regulatory oversight. He takes a percentage. The people he works for take the rest. Everyone profits." Minjun took the binoculars back. "Until someone gets careless." And he's been careless. Profoundly. He's using hotel business centers to send encrypted emails, meeting clients in public buildings, keeping records on his laptop. Minjun shook his head. "Amateur work for someone who should know better." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you deserve to see who he actually is. Not the man who promised you marriage and stability. Not the man you convinced yourself you were protecting. The real man. The one who's been lying to you for years while building a second life you knew nothing about." Elara felt something inside her chest collapse inward, like a structure losing its last support beam. All those nights Adrian came home late. All those work trips. All those times he'd accused her of being paranoid when she asked questions. He hadn't been working late. He'd been building this. Whatever this was. "What happens now?" "That depends on you." Minjun moved away from the window. "The people your husband took money from are not forgiving. They want their investment back, plus penalties for his incompetence. He can't pay it, which means they'll take it from him other ways." "You mean they'll kill him?" "Eventually, after they've extracted everything else of value first." He said it like he was discussing the weather. "Unless an alternative arrangement can be made." "What kind of arrangement?" "One where the debt is forgiven in exchange for something equally valuable. Information, access, cooperation." Minjun's eyes held hers. "You were married to him for 12 years. You know things, patterns, contacts, where he keeps records, what he's afraid of. You want me to give you information about my husband so you can, what, blackmail him? I want you to help us recoup our losses without resorting to violence. If you do that, your husband walks away with his life. You walk away with your freedom. Everyone gets what they need. Except Adrian loses everything. He already lost everything when he made bad choices." Minjun stepped closer. "Mrs. Cross, Elara, he abandoned you. He stole from you. He's been lying to you for years. And when given the choice between protecting you and protecting himself, he chose himself every single time. When will you do the same?" The question hung in the air between them. When would she choose herself? When would she stop making excuses for a man who'd never made any for her? When would she acknowledge that the marriage she'd been trying to save had died years ago, and she'd just been too afraid to bury it? I need time. You have until tomorrow night. After that, events will proceed without your input. Minjun moved to the door, opened it. Go back to your hotel. Think clearly, and ask yourself one question. If your positions were reversed, would Adrian hesitate to protect himself at your expense? Alara already knew the answer. She left the building and walked to the subway in a daze, got on the wrong train, had to backtrack. Finally made it to the hotel after midnight. The suite was exactly as she'd left it, empty, quiet, waiting. She pulled out her laptop, her personal one, not the shared one Adrian monitored, opened her email, scrolled back through 12 years of messages, found the ones from Adrian's work account, the ones he'd CC'd her on when they first married, when he was still pretending transparency mattered. Started clicking through attachments, spreadsheets, contact lists, meeting notes, pieces of a life she hadn't known existed. At 3 a.m., buried in a folder marked personal, she found a document titled Exit Strategy. She opened it. It was dated 6 months ago. A detailed plan for liquidating assets, establishing offshore accounts, and relocating to Southeast Asia. Projections for living expenses. Timelines for visa applications. Plans for one person. Not two. No mention of her anywhere in the document. He'd been planning to leave her for 6 months. The trip to Seoul wasn't a reset. It was the execution. Alara closed the laptop and sat in the dark suite, staring at nothing. Somewhere in this city, Adrian was sleeping peacefully, confident in his plan, certain she would wait exactly as he'd told her to, that she would accept whatever story he eventually constructed to justify this, that she would be the same woman she'd always been, manageable, predictable, small. But that woman had died somewhere between the embassy and the private club, between the river and the binoculars, between trust and evidence. What remained was something else entirely. At 8 a.m., Alara showered and dressed, left the hotel, took the subway to the private club. The receptionist looked up. "He's expecting you." 3rd floor, room 7. Minjun stood by the window again like he'd never left. Maybe he hadn't. "Mrs. Cross, you've made a decision." It wasn't a question. Alara crossed the room and stood beside him, looking out at the city that had witnessed her dismantling and was now witnessing something else. Something harder. "Tell me exactly what you need." Minjun smiled, not warmly, not cruelly, just satisfied. "Everything you know about how your husband operates, his patterns, his contacts, his weaknesses." He pulled out a tablet, opened a recording app. "Start talking." And Alara did. She told him about Adrian's laptop password, their wedding date, because he'd never bothered to change it, about the encrypted email account he thought she didn't know about the way he always met new clients at the Meridian Capital office downtown before taking them somewhere private, about his fear of public scandal above all else, about the offshore account in the Caymans he'd mentioned once, drunk, before immediately trying to walk it back. She talked for 2 hours. Minjun recorded everything, asked clarifying questions, took notes. When she finished, her throat was dry and her hands were steady for the first time in days. "Good." Minjun saved the recording. "This is sufficient. What happens now? Now we move on your husband. Freeze his accounts, seize his assets, make it impossible for him to operate." He looked at her directly. "Within 48 hours, he'll be desperate. That's when we approach him with terms. And me? You disappear. New passport, new accounts, new identity if you want it." He handed her a phone. New, burner, untraceable. "Use this for the next week. Don't contact anyone from your old life. Don't go back to the hotel. We'll provide temporary housing." "Where?" "Somewhere Adrian will never find you." Minjun stood. "Somewhere you can decide who you want to become without him determining the answer." Alara took the phone, felt its weight, its possibility. "One more thing." Minjun pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Your passport, emergency documents, enough cash to last a month." She opened the envelope. Her passport stared back at her. Her photo, her name, absolutely legitimate. "How? I have resources you don't need to understand." He moved toward the door. Someone will take you to your new accommodation. Stay there. Stay quiet. When this is over, you'll have options. Real ones. And if I change my mind, if I want to warn him,
Minjun paused. Then you'll have made your choice. But I don't think you will. He left. A woman appeared, different from before, younger, efficient. This way, Mrs. Cross. Alara followed. Down different stairs, through a back exit, into a car with tinted windows. They drove for 20 minutes, stopped in front of a modern apartment building in a neighborhood that felt residential, quiet, safe. 5th floor, apartment 512. Everything you need is there. Someone will check on you daily. The woman handed her a key. Don't leave unless absolutely necessary. Then she was gone. Alara stood on the sidewalk, key in hand, passport in her pocket, watching her old life recede like a tide going out. She should feel guilty, should feel afraid, should feel something other than this cold, bright clarity. But all she felt was free. She went inside, took the elevator to the 5th floor, opened apartment 512. It was small, but perfect. 1 bedroom, kitchenette, sitting area with a window overlooking the city. Simple furniture, clean lines. Nothing expensive. Nothing that would draw attention. Nothing that belonged to Adrian. Alara set her bag down. Checked the cabinets, stocked with food. The bathroom, supplies for a month. The closet, clothes in her size still tagged. They'd thought of everything. She sat on the sofa and pulled out the burner phone. 1 contact saved. Kang. She stared at it for a long time. Then she opened the window and let Seoul's evening air wash over her face, cool and clean and carrying the scent of freedom she'd almost forgotten existed. Somewhere in this city, Adrian was about to discover that his carefully constructed world was collapsing. And for the first time in 12 years, Alara wasn't going to save him. The first 48 hours in apartment 512 felt like existing in a vacuum. Sterile, silent, disconnected from anything resembling before or after. Alara moved through the space like a ghost inhabiting someone else's life, making coffee she didn't taste, staring at a television she didn't turn on, sleeping in fragments that left her more exhausted than rest. The burner phone stayed on the counter, untouched except when the daily check-in came through. Always the same woman's voice. Always the same question. Are you well? Yes. Do you need anything? No. Click. On the 3rd morning, the phone rang off schedule. Alara stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Mrs. Cross, Minjun's voice sharper than before. We have a situation. Her stomach tightened. What kind of situation? Your husband knows you're not at the hotel. He's looking for you. How would he? He came back to Seoul. Went to the suite yesterday. Found it empty. A pause. He's panicking. Good, Alara thought. Let him panic. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt waking up alone in this city. But Minjun's tone suggested panic wasn't the primary concern. He filed a missing person report with the Seoul Metropolitan Police. Told them you're mentally unstable, that you stopped taking medication, that he's worried you might hurt yourself. The words hit like a physical blow. I know. But the optics are challenging. American woman, no passport initially, husband expressing concern for her welfare. Minjun's voice hardened. The police are now involved in a way that complicates our timeline. What does that mean? It means we need to move faster. Your husband is attempting to control the narrative before we can dismantle his operation. If the police find you first, his version becomes the official record. Alara's hands shook. Adrian was using the system, the same system she'd tried to navigate at the embassy, in the police report for her passport, to paint her as unstable, to make her the problem. 12 years of conditioning screamed at her to defend herself, to prove she wasn't crazy, to make someone believe her. But a newer voice, colder and clearer, asked a different question. What would happen if she stopped caring what Adrian's narrative said about her? What do you need me to do? Stay where you are. Don't contact anyone. We're accelerating the operation. Minjun paused. There's something else. We've been monitoring your husband's communications. He's been in contact with someone unexpected. Who? A woman named Caroline Webb, works for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division out of New York. The floor tilted. What?
Your husband has been feeding information to the FBI about the people he's been laundering money for. He's positioning himself as a cooperating witness in exchange for immunity. Alara's vision blurred at the edges. What? He's playing both sides, taking money from criminals while reporting their activities to federal investigators. It's why he's been so careless. He has protection, or thinks he does. Minjun's voice went cold. What he doesn't realize is that protection doesn't extend to Seoul, and the people he's betrayed here don't care about American immunity deals. So what happens to him? That depends on how quickly we move. If we can seize his assets and extract what we're owed before the FBI intervenes, your husband becomes someone else's problem. If not, he didn't finish the sentence. Alara sat down heavily on the sofa, phone pressed to her ear, trying to process. Adrian had been informing on the criminals he was working with, had been building a case while building his exit strategy, had been playing a game so complex she'd never even known there was a board, and he'd left her in Seoul as what? Collateral? A distraction? An obstacle he could remove from the equation while he orchestrated his grand escape? Mrs. Cross, are you listening? Yes. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Minjun's tone shifted. Did you know about any of this? About the FBI? About his cooperation? No, I didn't know about any of it. Are you certain? The question carried weight, accusation, the possibility that she'd been complicit all along. I didn't know, she repeated, voice hard. He told me nothing. I was furniture in his life, decoration. You don't explain strategy to decoration. Silence on the other end. Then, I believe you, but others might not, which means you need to stay hidden until this resolves. If the FBI connects you to our operation, they won't. I haven't done anything illegal. You've provided information about your husband to a criminal organization. The FBI might disagree about the legality. Minjun exhaled. Stay in the apartment. Don't leave. Don't contact anyone. We'll handle this. The line went dead. Alara sat in the silence, phone still pressed to her ear, her mind racing through implications like a rat in a maze. Adrian was FBI, or working with them, or using them. She couldn't tell anymore where the lies ended and truth began. Had anything he'd told her in 12 years been real? The phone rang again. Different number this time, unknown. She almost didn't answer, but something, instinct, desperation, the need to hear a voice that wasn't Minjun's made her thumb move. Alara, Adrian's voice, tight, strained, wrong. Thank God, where are you? Her throat closed. She should hang up, should throw the phone across the room, should do anything except engage. Instead, she heard herself say, somewhere safe. Safe from what? Alara, you're not making sense. I came back to the hotel and you were gone. No note, no explanation. I've been losing my mind. The performance was flawless. Concern, confusion. The perfect worried husband. If she hadn't spent the last 72 hours learning exactly who he was, she might have believed it. You came back from where? She asked quietly. A beat of hesitation. From work. I told you I had work obligations. In Busan? Silence. Complete. Absolute. Then, who told you that? Does it matter? Alara. His voice changed, harder now, the real Adrian bleeding through. What have you done? What have I done? The laugh that escaped her felt like broken glass. I woke up. I stopped waiting. I stopped believing your lies. You don't understand what you're involved in. Then explain it to me. Explain the money laundering. Explain the FBI. Explain the exit strategy document that mentions every asset we own except me. The silence stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. You went through my files. You stole my passport. I was protecting you. From what? From yourself. From making exactly the kind of stupid, impulsive decisions you're making right now. His breath came harsh through the phone. Do you have any idea what you've put in motion? Do you understand the people you're dealing with? Better than I understood you, apparently. Alara listened to me very carefully. Whatever they've told you is a lie. Whatever they've promised you is manipulation. These people are criminals. They will use you and discard you the second you're no longer valuable. Sounds familiar. This isn't a game. These people kill for a living. And you steal from them while reporting them to federal investigators. Who's playing the more dangerous game? Another silence. When Adrian spoke again, his voice had shifted into something she'd never heard before. Desperate, almost pleading. Where are you staying? Why? Because I need to get you out of there before they decide you're a liability. Or before the FBI finds me and I become inconvenient to your immunity deal? That's not... How do you know about that? I know everything, Adrian. I know about Caroline Webb. I know about the offshore accounts. I know you've been planning to disappear for 6 months. Her voice broke. I know I was never part of the plan. You were always part of the plan. Stop lying! The words ripped out of her. Just once, stop lying to me. I have spent 12 years believing every word you said and hating myself for the parts that didn't make sense. I made myself smaller and quieter and less so you could feel bigger, and I never questioned it because you told me that's what love looked like. But it wasn't love, it was control. And the second I wasn't useful anymore, you threw me away. I left you in a 5-star hotel. You left me with no passport and no money in a country where I don't speak the language. Her hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped the phone. You drugged me. You stole from me. You lied to me. And now you want me to believe you're trying to protect me? From who? From the consequences of your choices? Elara, no. You don't get to do that anymore. You don't get to say my name like it means something. She was crying now, hot, furious tears. I gave you 12 years. I gave you everything. And it was never enough because you never wanted a partner. You wanted someone you could manage. That's not true. Then why did you leave me here? The question hung between them. Adrian's voice, when it came, was flat, empty. Because you were going to leave me anyway. The admission landed like a bomb. What? You were pulling away. I could feel it. The questions, the distance. You were going to figure it out eventually, and when you did, you'd leave. His breath came ragged. So I left first. I controlled the timing. I controlled the narrative. I controlled you. There it was. The truth underneath all the lies. Not protection, not love, not even strategy. Just the need to win. To never be the one left behind. To make sure that if the marriage ended, he ended it. Elara felt something inside her chest turn to stone. You're right. I would have left. Should have left years ago. But I was too afraid, too convinced I needed you, too certain I couldn't survive alone. You can't, but I am surviving. Without you. Without your control. Without your version of what I'm supposed to be. She wiped her eyes. So go back to Busan. Go back to the FBI. Go back to whatever game you're playing. I'm done being a piece on your board. Elara, if you don't tell me where you are right now, you're going to get hurt. These people don't negotiate. Neither do I. Not anymore. She ended the call. The phone immediately started ringing again. Adrian. She declined it. It rang again. Declined. Again. She powered it off entirely and sat in the sudden silence, her whole body trembling. The second phone, her old one, the one she'd kept charged out of habit, buzzed on the counter. A text from a number she didn't recognize. That was a mistake. Then another message. A photo. Her stomach turned to ice. It was her. Walking into the private club 3 days ago. Time-stamped. Clear. Another photo. Her leaving the club with Min Jun's associate. Another. Her entering this apartment building. The messages kept coming. 12 photos. 24. Evidence of every move she'd made since arriving in Seoul. Then, you've been very busy for someone who claims to know nothing. Alara's hands went numb. The phone rang. Same unknown number. She answered. Mrs. Cross? My name is Caroline Webb. I'm with the FBI. The woman's voice was crisp, professional, American. I think we need to talk. I haven't done anything. You've been meeting with Kang Min Jun. You've provided him with information about your husband's financial activities. You've accepted payment and resources from a known criminal organization. Webb's tone didn't change. From where I'm sitting, you've done quite a lot. I didn't know, he said. I know what he said. They always say the same things. Protection, justice, freedom. A pause. What they don't say is that they're using you to get to your husband, and once they have what they need, you become a loose end. Alara's vision tunneled. I want a lawyer. You're not under arrest, yet. Right now you're a witness, a potential asset, but if you continue working with Kang, that status changes very quickly. I'm not working with him. You gave him classified information about an ongoing federal investigation. You helped him identify targets. You accepted assistance in evading law enforcement. Webb's voice hardened. Mrs. Cross, I understand your husband put you in an impossible situation. I understand you were hurt and angry and vulnerable, but you need to stop digging this hole deeper. What do you want from me? I want you to come in, voluntary, no arrest, no charges, just a conversation about what Kang told you and what you told him. And if I don't, then I'll have Korean authorities pick you up on suspicion of conspiracy to commit money laundering. You'll spend the next 6 months fighting extradition while your husband testifies against people who now think you betrayed them. Webb paused. How long do you think you'll survive once that becomes public knowledge? Alara's chest constricted. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I need time. You have 2 hours. There's a cafe 3 blocks from your current location. Moonlight Coffee. Be there at 6 p.m. alone, or I send the Seoul police to bring you in. The line went dead. Alara stood frozen in the middle of the apartment, both phones in her hands, her entire body shaking. She'd traded Adrian's control for Minjun's, had thought she was choosing freedom when she was just choosing a different cage. And now the FBI had photos, evidence, a narrative that made her look complicit in crimes she barely understood. The burner phone powered back on. Immediate notifications, missed calls from Minjun. A single text. We need to meet, now. She was trapped between 2 forces, both claiming to protect her, both using her as leverage against the other, both willing to destroy her the second she stopped being useful. Adrian had been right about one thing. She didn't understand what she'd gotten involved in, but she was learning fast. The clock on the wall read 4:47 p.m. 73 minutes until the FBI meeting. Alara grabbed her passport from the drawer where she'd hidden it, grabbed the cash Minjun had provided, grabbed nothing else. She left the apartment and took the stairs down, emerging onto the street in the late afternoon light. No plan, no direction, just movement. A black car pulled up to the curb before she'd gone 10 steps. The rear door opened. Minjun sat inside, expression unreadable. Get in. How did you... I've had people watching the building since you moved in, for your protection. His eyes locked on hers. Get in, now, before the FBI surveillance units realize you've left. Alara looked up and down the street, saw nothing, saw everything. Every parked car could be surveillance, every pedestrian could be law enforcement. She got in the car. Minjun didn't speak until they'd pulled into traffic. Then, the FBI contacted you. Not a question. Yes. What did they say? That I'm a suspect, that I helped you commit crimes, that I need to come in for questioning. And you believe them? I don't know what to believe anymore. Minjun pulled out a tablet, opened a file. This is what the FBI hasn't told you. Your husband's immunity deal requires him to provide evidence against everyone in the network. That includes people in Seoul, Korean nationals who can't be extradited to the U.S. He turned the tablet toward her. Financial records. Names she didn't recognize. Photos of men in expensive suits. These people have invested millions in legitimate businesses using the channels your husband helped establish. If the FBI seizes those assets, these men lose everything. Their reputations, their companies, their freedom. Minjun's voice went cold. They will kill anyone they perceive as responsible for that loss. Your husband is naming you as a co-conspirator in his federal testimony. The world stopped. What? He's claiming you managed the accounts, that you facilitated the transfers, that you were the primary contact with Korean entities. Minjun pulled up another document, testimony transcripts with her name highlighted throughout. He's making you the architect of his crimes. Alara couldn't breathe, couldn't process. That's not... I know, but the FBI has your name on bank documents, your signature on transfer authorizations, your email address on correspondence with foreign banks. He forged those. I never signed anything. I believe you. But proving it will take months, maybe years.
And the men your husband is testifying against won't wait that long. Minjun closed the tablet. The FBI is offering you a deal. Testify against me, confirm that I coerced you into providing information, and they'll consider reducing charges against you. What charges? I haven't been charged with anything. Yet. But they will charge you. It's the only way their case against your husband works. They need you to be guilty, so his cooperation looks valuable. His eyes held hers. They're using you exactly the way Adrian is, as a tool, as leverage, as something expendable. Alara's hands fisted in her lap. So what do I do? You disappear, completely. New identity, new country, new life. I can arrange it within 24 hours. And then what? I spend the rest of my life hiding? You spend the rest of your life alive, which is more than you'll get if you meet with the FBI or if the people your husband betrayed find you first. Minjun leaned back. There's a third option, which is? You testify against your husband. Truthfully. You confirm he forged your signatures. You provide evidence of his actual crimes. You help us dismantle his immunity deal before it can destroy innocent people. Innocent? The word came out harsh. You just said these people are criminals. They're businessmen who used gray market channels to move money. Your husband turned them into targets of a federal investigation while stealing from them simultaneously. There's a difference between bending laws and breaking them. Your husband did both. Minjun's expression hardened, and he's willing to let you burn for it. The car stopped. Alara looked out the window. They were parked outside a nondescript building in a business district. Where are we? My office. Real one, not the club. Minjun opened his door. You have a choice to make, Mrs. Cross. Same choice you've always had. Who do you want to be? The woman Adrian made you? The woman the FBI wants to use? Or someone else entirely? He got out, left the door open, waiting. Alara sat in the leather seat, her whole body numb. Adrian had set her up, had forged her signature on criminal documents, had named her as his accomplice in federal testimony, was using her as a shield while he walked away free. The FBI wanted to flip her against Minjun, wanted her to become their witness in exchange for maybe not destroying her life. Minjun wanted her to testify against Adrian, to burn the man who'd already burned her. Everyone wanted something from her. No one was offering her a way out that didn't require sacrificing herself. She thought about the woman she'd been 4 days ago, waking up alone in a hotel suite, terrified, powerless, waiting for someone else to decide her fate. She thought about the woman she'd become in the 72 hours since, harder, colder, capable of things she'd never imagined. She thought about the woman she could be if she stopped letting other people write her story. Alara got out of the car. Minjun was waiting by the building entrance. He nodded slightly, approval or acknowledgement, she couldn't tell, and held the door. The lobby was sleek, modern, utterly normal. They took an elevator to the 8th floor, walked down a hallway that could have belonged to any corporate office. Minjun opened a door at the end. The room beyond was a conference space, long table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's evening skyline. Long Ian Tuakies. 3 men sat at the table, all Korean, all wearing suits that cost more than cars, all watching her with expressions that gave away nothing. Gentlemen, Minjun said in English, this is Alara Cross, the woman whose husband has been stealing from you while selling you to American federal investigators. One of the men, older, gray-haired, with eyes that had seen violence and ordered more, spoke. His English was accented but precise. Mrs. Cross, your husband has cost us significant resources. Do you understand the situation you're in? Alara met his gaze, didn't flinch. Yes. And yet you came here anyway. That suggests either bravery or stupidity. It suggests I'm tired of being used. Something flickered in the man's expression. Amusement, maybe. Or respect. Your husband claims you managed his operations in Korea, that you authorized transfers, that you were his partner in all of this. My husband is a liar. We know. But the FBI believes him. Which means Korean authorities will believe him. Which means you will be arrested, tried, and convicted for crimes you didn't commit. The man leaned back. Unless you help us prove otherwise. How? By testifying.
by providing evidence that your signatures were forged, by demonstrating that your husband acted alone while using you as an unwitting shield. He paused. And by helping us recover what he stole. I don't have access to his accounts, but you know how he thinks, how he operates, where he would hide assets. The man's eyes locked on hers. You were married to him for 12 years. You know him better than anyone. It was true. She didn't know him, knew his paranoia, his need for control, his patterns, knew that he kept backup drives hidden in places he thought were clever, knew that he documented everything because he never trusted anyone, not even the people he was betraying. If I help you, she said slowly, what happens to me? You get your life back, clean passport, clean record, enough money to start over anywhere you choose. The man glanced at Min Jun. And protection from anyone who might want to use you as leverage against your husband. For how long? As long as necessary. It wasn't a real answer, but it was more than the FBI had offered, more than Adrian had left her with. I wanted in writing, the immunity, the protection, all of it. The man smiled slightly. You're learning. Good. He nodded to Min Jun, who pulled out a document and slid it across the table. Alara read it carefully. Legal language, half in English, half in Korean. But the essential terms were clear. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity from prosecution and physical protection. I need a lawyer to review this. You need to sign it now. The FBI's deadline is in... Min Jun checked his watch. 43 minutes. If you're not at that cafe, they'll issue a warrant. Once that happens, this offer disappears. Alara's hand trembled slightly as she picked up the pen. She thought about Adrian, about 12 years of marriage built on lies and control, about waking up alone in Seoul, about the exit strategy document that erased her from his future. She thought about the FBI agent who'd threatened her with conspiracy charges for crimes she didn't commit. She thought about the woman she'd been and the woman she was becoming. Then she signed. The gray-haired man took the document, examined her signature, and nodded. Welcome to the truth, Mrs. Cross. It's less comfortable than the lies, but at least it's yours. Min Jun's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expression tightening. We have a problem. What kind? Your husband just walked into Seoul Metropolitan Police Headquarters. He's requesting protective custody, claiming you and I are conspiring to kill him. The room went silent. Alara's voice came out steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. Can he do that? He already has. The police are issuing arrest warrants for both of you within the hour. Min Jun looked at the gray-haired man. We're out of time. The older man stood. Then we move now. Mrs. Cross, everything you know about your husband, his accounts, his contacts, his locations, you tell us immediately. We have one chance to dismantle his operation before he disappears into federal protection. I don't know where he's staying. Yes, you do. Min Jun pulled up a map on the tablet. Think. Where would Adrian go in a crisis? Where does he feel safest? Alara closed her eyes, forced herself back through 12 years of patterns. Adrian always chose the same types of places. High-end, secure, close to financial districts. The Shilla, she said suddenly. It's a hotel in Jangchung-dong, 5-star. He stayed there on a business trip 2 years ago. Said it had the best security he'd ever seen. Min Jun was already on his phone, speaking rapid Korean. He listened, nodded, hung up. He checked in 4 hours ago, presidential suite, used a corporate card. The gray-haired man smiled without warmth. Sloppy, he's panicking. Good, Min Jun said. Panic makes people careless. He turned to Alara. You're coming with us. What? No, You're the only person who can confirm his identity if he denies it. The only person who knows enough about his operation to contradict his lies. Min Jun's expression hardened. And if we leave you here, the FBI will have you in custody within the hour. Your choice. It wasn't a choice. It was an ultimatum dressed as options. But that's all any of this had ever been. Alara stood. Let's go. They took 2 cars. Alara rode with Min Jun, the gray-haired man, whose name, she learned, was Park Ji-hoon, in the vehicle behind them with his associates. The drive took 20 minutes through evening traffic. Seoul's lights blurred past the tinted windows. Alara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. What happens when we get there? She asked. We confront him. We recover what he stole. We make it clear that running to the police or the FBI won't save him. Min Jun's voice was flat, clinical. And then we let him make a choice. What choice? Cooperate and live, or refuse and discover what happens to people who steal from men like Park Ji-hoon. The Shilla rose ahead of them, elegant, imposing, every window glowing with expensive electricity. The cars pulled into the underground garage, parking in a section that looked private, restricted. Park Ji-hoon emerged from the second vehicle, flanked by two younger men whose suits didn't quite hide the shapes of weapons beneath them. Top floor, Park said. Suite 2401. 4 of my people are already in position. How? I own 30% of this hotel, Mrs. Cross. Getting access isn't difficult. He started toward the elevator. Stay close. Say nothing unless I ask you a direct question. Understand? Alara nodded. The elevator ride felt eternal. Her reflection in the polished brass doors showed a woman she barely recognized, pale, hollow-eyed, wearing someone else's clothes and someone else's nightmare. The doors opened on the 24th floor. 2 men stood in the hallway, hotel security, except their posture suggested they'd never checked a guest into anything. They nodded at Park, stepped aside. Suite 2401's door was slightly ajar. Park pushed it open. The suite was vast. Living room, dining area, bedroom visible through an open door. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's night skyline. And in the center of the living room, sitting on a cream-colored sofa with a glass of scotch in his hand, was Adrian. He looked up as they entered. His eyes found Alara first, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, calculation, fear. Then his expression smoothed into something carefully neutral. Alara, thank God you're safe. He stood. These people haven't hurt you, have they? The performance. Even now. Even caught. He was still performing. Park Ji-hoon moved deeper into the room, his associates spreading out to block the exits. Mr. Cross, we need to discuss your debt. Adrian's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. No? Park pulled out a tablet, called up documents. 15 million in transactions you facilitated, 20% commission you took, except you took 40% and reported the operations to American federal investigators. That's a lie. We have your emails, your bank records, your testimony transcripts. Park's voice never rose. Didn't need to. You stole from us while destroying our operations. That requires correction. Adrian's eyes darted to Alara. Did you tell them that? Did you give them my files? She didn't answer. Alara, his voice cracked. What did you do? I stopped protecting you. The words hung in the air. Adrian's face twisted into something ugly. You stupid. Do you have any idea what you've done? These people are criminals. They'll kill you the second you're not useful. Like you were going to? Alara stepped forward. I found the exit strategy, Adrian. The offshore accounts. The plans to disappear. The FBI immunity deal that names me as your accomplice. I was protecting you. Stop lying. Her voice echoed off the suite's high ceilings. You forged my signature on documents. You told federal investigators I managed your criminal operations. You set me up to take the fall while you walked away free. That's not protection. That's murder by proxy. Adrian looked at Park. Whatever she's told you is false. My wife is mentally unstable. She's been off her medication for months. She doesn't know what she's saying. I'm standing right here, Alara cut in, her voice ice. I can hear you, and I know exactly what I'm saying. You used me. For 12 years you used me. And when you didn't need me anymore, you tried to destroy me. I gave you everything. You gave me a cage and called it a marriage. The suite went silent. Adrian's mask finally cracked. Underneath was something cold and desperate and small. You couldn't survive without me, he said quietly. You needed me to tell you what to think, what to do, who to be. Without me, you're nothing. You've always been nothing. The word should have hurt, should have found the soft places inside her that 12 years of conditioning had created. But Alara felt nothing except cold clarity. You're right, she said. I was nothing. But that's because you spent 12 years making me nothing, cutting away every piece of me that didn't serve you, every opinion, every choice, every moment of autonomy. She took a step closer. But you made a mistake. You left me alone in this city with nothing to lose. And I learned that nothing is actually freedom. Park cleared his throat. This is touching, but we're here for business. He nodded to one of his associates, who produced a laptop and set it on the coffee table. Mr. Cross, you're going to transfer the money you stole, all of it, right now. Adrian's laugh came harsh and broken. Or what? You'll kill me? In a hotel you own where everything's on camera? No cameras in this suite. I made certain of that. Park's expression didn't change. And yes, we'll kill you, but not quickly, not cleanly. Your body will be found eventually, but by then you'll have been missing long enough that no one will ask useful questions. Adrian's face went white. He looked at Alara. You can't let them do this. Alara, please. I'm your husband. No. Her voice was steady. You stopped being my husband when you drugged me in that hotel room. Maybe before that. Maybe you never were. Alara stood. Transfer the money, Adrian. Give them what you stole. It's the only way you walk out of here. His hands were shaking as he reached for the laptop, opened it, navigated to a banking portal Alara had never seen. 15 minutes of typing, account numbers, passwords, authorizations. Park's associate confirmed each transfer on his own device, nodding. Finally. Complete. Park stood. Thank you, Mr. Cross. You've been surprisingly cooperative. So I can go? No. The word was absolute. Adrian's face went from white to gray. You said, I said you could transfer the money, which you did. I never said you could leave. Park gestured to his associates. You reported our operations to federal investigators. You destroyed partnerships that took years to build. Money doesn't repair that damage. Please, I'll disappear. I'll never speak to the FBI again. You'll do exactly what I tell you. Park's voice could have cut glass. You're going to recant your testimony. You're going to tell the FBI you lied. You're going to destroy your immunity deal from the inside. I can't do that. They'll prosecute me for everything. Yes, they will. And you'll plead guilty. And you'll serve whatever sentence they give you. Park leaned down until he was eye level with Adrian. Because if you don't, your wife dies. Not quickly. Not cleanly. And you'll know it was your fault. Adrian's eyes shot to Alara. You're threatening her? She's innocent. She signed a cooperation agreement an hour ago. She's under our protection now, which continues as long as you do exactly what we require. Park straightened. Refuse, and that protection ends. Simple. Alara's blood turned to ice. The agreement, the immunity. It wasn't freedom. It was a leash. Park looked at her, his expression almost sympathetic. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cross, but your husband created this situation. We're simply managing it. You said I'd be free. You will be, once he's fulfilled his obligations. Until then, you're a guarantee of his cooperation. Park moved toward the door. My people will take you somewhere safe, comfortable. You'll want for nothing, but you won't leave. Not until this is resolved. That's kidnapping. That's protection. From the FBI who want to prosecute you. From the police who have a warrant for your arrest. From anyone else your husband might have angered. Park paused at the threshold. Would you prefer we leave you to face those alternatives alone? She had no answer, because he was right. The FBI was hunting her. The police wanted her. Adrian had set her up for crimes she didn't commit. Minjun's hand settled on her elbow, gentle but firm. Let's go, Mrs. Cross. She looked back at Adrian. He sat on the sofa, head in his hands, the laptop still open in front of him. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of believing in something that had never existed, and now they were both prisoners of choices neither of them could take back. Alara, Adrian's voice small and broken. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She didn't respond, didn't acknowledge. Just let Minjun guide her out of the suite, into the hallway, into the elevator that descended toward a future she hadn't chosen but couldn't escape. The cars were waiting in the garage. Different building this time, somewhere on the east side of the city. Apartment on the 12th floor. Larger than the last one, more luxurious, but the windows were sealed shut and the door locked from the outside. A gilded cage. Minjun left her there with a promise someone would check on her in the morning. Alara stood in the center of the apartment, this beautiful, expensive prison, and finally let herself feel it. The rage, the terror, the crushing weight of realizing she'd traded one captor for another. She thought she was choosing freedom, but she'd just been choosing which chains to wear. And somewhere in Seoul, Adrian was making the same calculations. Two people who'd destroyed each other, now both trapped by forces they'd unleashed trying to escape. The city lights glittered through the sealed windows like stars she could see but never reach. Alara sank to the floor, back against the wall, and wondered if she would ever breathe free air again. Or if this endless cycle of cages and captors and choices that weren't really choices was all she'd ever know. The first 72 hours in the new apartment passed in a fog of rage so pure it felt like clarity. Alara didn't sleep, didn't eat the food they left outside her door each morning, just paced the 12 by 15 meter space like a caged animal, learning the dimensions of its prison, counting steps, measuring windows that wouldn't open, testing a door that wouldn't budge. On the fourth morning, the lock clicked. She spun toward the sound, every muscle coiled. Minjun stepped inside, carrying a breakfast tray he set on the counter without looking at her. "You need to eat." "I need to leave." "Not possible." "You're holding me hostage." "I'm keeping you alive." He finally met her eyes. "The FBI issued a warrant for your arrest 2 days ago. Conspiracy to commit money laundering, obstruction of justice. If you walk out that door, you'll be in custody within an hour. Then let them arrest me. At least I'll have a lawyer, a trial, rights. You'll have a cell and a prosecutor who believes your husband's testimony over yours." Minjun moved to the window, looking out at the Seoul skyline. Adrian recanted his federal cooperation yesterday, told the FBI he lied about everything, that he acted alone, that you were never involved. Alara's breath caught. "What?" "He destroyed his immunity deal, confessed to all of it, the laundering, the theft, the forgery." Minjun's voice was flat. "He's facing 20 years minimum, probably more." The room tilted. "Why would he do that?" "Because Park Ji-hoon made it very clear what would happen to you if he didn't." Minjun turned to face her. "Your husband chose prison over your death. I'd call that progress." "That's not... He didn't choose anything. You forced him." "Yes, we did. Just like he forced you into this situation by using you as a shield for his crimes." Minjun's expression hardened. "The difference is, we're keeping you alive. He was content to let you burn." Alara's hands fisted at her sides. "So what happens now? I stay here forever? You keep me locked up because Adrian might change his mind? You stay here until the FBI closes its investigation into you, until the evidence proves you were a victim, not a participant. That takes time." "How much time?" "Months. Maybe a year." The air left her lungs. A year. 12 months in this apartment, this cage, this beautiful prison. "No." The word came out hard. Absolute. "No, I won't do this." "You don't have a choice." "There's always a choice." Alara stepped forward. "You said it yourself. The FBI has a warrant. Fine. I'll turn myself in. I'll take my chances with a lawyer and a trial. You'll lose. Maybe. But at least I'll be fighting for myself instead of being someone's leverage." Her voice shook but held. "I spent 12 years being Adrian's prisoner. I won't spend the next year being yours." Minjun studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke rapid Korean. Listened. His expression shifted. Surprise, calculation, something darker. He hung up. "There's been a development." "What kind of development?" "Your husband escaped federal custody this morning." Alara's stomach dropped. "What?" "He was being transferred from Seoul Metropolitan Police to a detention facility pending extradition. The transport was ambushed. 3 officers injured. Adrian is gone." The room spun. "Where? Who?" "We don't know. But Park Ji-hoon's people weren't involved, which means someone else wanted your husband free." Minjun's jaw tightened. Someone with resources and motivation we didn't anticipate. "The FBI, is tearing Seoul apart looking for him. And when they don't find him, they'll come looking for you. Because as far as they're concerned, you're the only person with leverage to bring him in." Alara sank onto the sofa, her mind racing. Adrian was free, running, with someone powerful enough to break him out of police custody, which meant everything had just gotten exponentially more dangerous. "I need to leave the city," she said quietly. "Now, before the FBI finds me." "Agreed." Minjun was already texting. Pack light. We move in 20 minutes. Move where? Somewhere the FBI can't touch you. Somewhere Adrian can't find you. He looked up. Somewhere Park Ji-hoon maintains complete control. The private club. Alara understood without him saying it. The one place in Seoul that operated outside normal jurisdiction, where cameras didn't work and records didn't exist, and people disappeared into shadow. The place she'd walked into 5 days ago thinking it was a choice. Now it was her only option. She packed in 15 minutes. Minimal clothes. Her passport. The cash that was left. Nothing else mattered. Minjun led her down a service elevator, through a basement garage where a different car waited. Black sedan, tinted windows, plates she didn't recognize. They drove in silence through midday traffic. Alara watched Seoul pass outside the windows, wondering if she'd ever see it again as a free woman. The club appeared exactly as before. Unremarkable facade, unmarked door, the kind of building eyes slid past without registering. Inside, the same careful quiet. The same receptionist who nodded at Minjun and didn't look at Alara. But instead of the third floor, they took stairs down. Basement level. A hallway that felt more industrial than the polished elegance above. Concrete floors. Exposed pipes. The bones of the building showing through. Minjun stopped at a reinforced door, entered a code. It opened with a hydraulic hiss. Beyond was a safe room. Compact, windowless, designed for hiding or interrogation depending on the circumstance. A bed, a bathroom, a table and chairs, everything necessary, nothing comfortable. You'll stay here until we determine next steps. Minjun gestured inside. No one knows about this room except Park's inner circle. You're safe. Safe or trapped? Both. He didn't apologize. Someone will bring meals. There's a call button if you need anything urgent. Otherwise, stay quiet and stay patient. He left before she could respond. The door sealed with the same hydraulic hiss. No handle on the inside. No lock she could manipulate. Alara stood in the center of the safe room, this concrete tomb, and felt the last threads of control slip through her fingers. She'd run from Adrian's cage into Minjun's, had traded one captor for another, had convinced herself she was making choices when all she'd been doing was choosing which prison to inhabit. Hours crawled past. No windows meant no sense of time, just the fluorescent lights and the silence and the walls pressing in. A knock finally came. The door opened. Not Minjun. A woman, young, early 20s, carrying a tray of food. She set it down without speaking and turned to leave. Wait. Alara's voice came out rough from disuse. Please, how long have I been here? The woman hesitated. 8 hours. What time is it? 9 p.m. Has there been news? About my husband? The woman's expression flickered. Pity, maybe, or recognition of a fellow prisoner. They found the transport vehicle. Empty, no trace of where he went. And the FBI? Looking. They raided the hotel where you were staying. Found nothing. She glanced at the door nervously. I have to go. What's your name? The question seemed to surprise her. Hannah. I'm Alara. I know. Hannah's voice softened slightly. Everyone knows who you are. The American woman who brought down her husband. Some people say you're brave, others say you're stupid. What do you say? Hannah looked at her directly. I say you're still alive. That's more than most people achieve in this world. She slipped out before Alara could respond. The tray held rice, soup, vegetables. Alara forced herself to eat, needed the energy, needed the clarity that came from not being weak with hunger. Because a plan was forming, fragile, desperate, probably doomed, but better than waiting in this concrete room for someone else to decide her fate. At midnight, the lights dimmed but didn't cut completely. Alara lay on the bed, eyes open, counting seconds, building a map in her mind of the building's layout from memory, the stairs she'd descended, the hallway, the direction they'd walked from the elevator. At 2 a.m., she pressed the call button. Nothing happened for 5 minutes. Then footsteps. The door opened. A man this time, security, clearly, from his build and the way he filled the doorframe. Problem? I'm sick. I need medicine. He studied her with professional skepticism. What kind of sick? Migraine, I get them. They're... She pressed her hand to her temple, let her voice shake. Please, it's getting worse. I can't...
I need something, anything. The man's expression didn't soften, but he nodded. Wait here. The door closed, locked. Alara waited, forced her breathing shallow and rapid. When he returned 10 minutes later with a glass of water and 2 pills, she let herself sway slightly. I need to sit down. He stepped inside to steady her. Just 2 steps, just enough. Alara drove her elbow into his throat with every ounce of strength she possessed. He staggered back, hands flying to his neck, eyes wide with shock. She didn't give him time to recover, grabbed the water glass and smashed it against the table edge. Shards glittered in her palm. I don't want to hurt you more, she said, voice steady despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins. But I will. Keys. Now. He was faster than she expected. His hand shot out, catching her wrist. She twisted, felt bone grind against bone, and brought her knee up hard. He doubled over with a grunt. The keys were on his belt. She tore them free and ran, into the hallway. Left because right led deeper underground. Her bare feet slapped against concrete. Behind her, the guard was yelling into a radio. Footsteps thundered in response. Stairs. She took them 2 at a time, lungs burning. First floor. The elegant hallway she remembered. Doors on both sides, all closed. The front entrance would be guarded. But there had been a service exit. She'd seen it when they'd brought her in. Back corner, near the kitchen. She ran. Every instinct screaming that this was insane, that she'd never make it, that she should stop and surrender before this got worse. But worse than what? Worse than being locked underground indefinitely? Worse than being leverage in a game she didn't understand? The kitchen appeared ahead. Industrial. Empty at this hour. And beyond it, blessed salvation, a door with an emergency exit sign. She hit it at full speed. Alarms shrieked. Seoul's night air slapped her face like a promise. She was outside. Free. Running down an alley in bare feet in clothes that marked her as out of place. Sirens in the distance. Whether for her or something else, she couldn't tell. She ran until her lungs felt like they'd tear apart, until her feet were bleeding and her vision blurred, until she collapsed against a wall in an alley 3 blocks from the club, gasping for air that tasted like freedom and terror. A car pulled up to the alley entrance, black, familiar. Alara's heart stopped. The rear door opened. Park Ji-hoon stepped out. Mrs. Cross? His voice carried the same flat calm it always did. That was remarkably stupid. She tried to run. Made it 5 steps before 2 men materialized from nowhere, blocking her path. Hands on her arms, not rough, not gentle, just inexorable. They guided her to the car. She fought, but it was useless. They were professionals, and she was exhausted and bleeding. Park settled into the seat beside her as the car pulled into traffic. You injured one of my men, triggered a building-wide security alert. Drew attention we specifically arranged to avoid. I won't be your prisoner. No, you'll be a corpse if you keep making these choices. He pulled out a tablet, showed her a news broadcast. Korean with English subtitles. FBI investigation intensifies. American woman sought in international fraud case. Her photo, her name. Her face plastered across Seoul's news cycle. Your front page news, Mrs. Cross. Every police officer in the city is looking for you. The American embassy has been notified. Your window for escape closed the moment you ran. Alara's throat tightened. Where are you taking me? Somewhere more secure, somewhere you can't hurt yourself or my operation. Park's eyes held hers. I gave you protection, shelter, a path forward, and you repaid that by assaulting my employee and fleeing into the night like a panicked child. You locked me in a basement. I kept you alive. His voice finally rose. Not a shout, but close. Do you have any comprehension of the forces converging on you? The FBI wants you in custody. The Korean police want you for questioning. And your husband, wherever he is, knows you're the only person who can definitively prove his guilt. You're the most hunted woman in Seoul right now, and you just announced your presence by triggering alarms in one of the few places that could hide you. The weight of it crashed down. Alara slumped against the seat, hands shaking. What happens now? Now you disappear, completely. Not to another apartment, not to another safe room. Park's expression hardened. To a place where even I can't protect you if you refuse to cooperate. The car drove for an hour, out of Seoul proper, into industrial outskirts where buildings gave way to warehouses and shipping containers.
They stopped at a facility that looked abandoned from the outside. Cracked pavement, rusted gates, no lights. Inside was a different story. Armed guards. Surveillance cameras. The kind of security that suggested valuable things were stored here, or dangerous people. They took her down more stairs, underground again. But this wasn't a safe room, this was a cell. Actual bars, concrete walls, a cot and a bucket, and nothing else. Park stood outside as they locked her in. "You'll stay here until you remember that your survival depends on doing exactly what I tell you." He turned to leave. "Wait." Alara gripped the bars. "Park, please, I can't do this." "You should have thought about that before you ran."
"I'll cooperate. I'll do whatever you need. Just don't leave me here." He paused. "Your husband escaped because someone powerful wanted him free. Someone with resources that rival mine. That means there's a player in this game we didn't anticipate. And until I know who they are and what they want, everyone is a liability. Including me."
"Especially you." Park's expression was almost sympathetic. "You're the prize, Mrs. Cross. The person everyone wants to control. Your husband needs you to stay silent. The FBI needs you to testify. My clients need you to guarantee Adrian's cooperation. And whoever broke him out of custody, they need you for something we haven't identified yet." "So I'm just supposed to rot in this cell?" "You're supposed to stay alive long enough for me to determine how to extract value from this catastrophe." He gestured to the guard. "Bring her food twice a day. Nothing else unless I authorize it." Then he was gone. The cell was maybe 2 meters by 3. The cot was a metal frame with a thin mattress that smelled like mildew. No window, just a single bulb in the ceiling that stayed on constantly. Alara sat on the cot and tried to think through the panic. Adrian was free. Someone had resources to break him out of police custody. Someone who wanted him alive and mobile. Which meant Adrian wasn't running scared, he was running toward something or someone. Hours passed, maybe days. Without windows, without routine, time became elastic and meaningless. Food came twice. A guard slid a tray through a slot in the bars. Rice, water, nothing else. Alara ate mechanically, forced herself to maintain strength. On what might have been the third day, voices echoed down the corridor. Multiple people. Urgent tones. The door at the end of the hall opened. Park Ji-hoon entered with Min Jun and 3 other men Alara didn't recognize. They were arguing in Korean, sharp, clipped exchanges that sounded like crisis management. Park finally switched to English, possibly for her benefit. "Show me the footage again." Min Jun pulled up a tablet. Even from the cell, Alara could see the grainy video. Security camera, somewhere public. A man in a suit walking through what looked like an airport terminal. Adrian. Incheon Airport, 2 hours ago. Min Jun's voice was tight. "He used a passport we didn't flag. Got through security. By the time we identified him, he was boarding a flight to Singapore." "How did he get a clean passport?" "Someone provided it. Someone with access to documentation we can't trace." Park's jaw worked. "He's running, which means he's abandoning whatever arrangement we had. Or he's being extracted, removed from the board before he becomes a bigger liability." Min Jun glanced at Alara. "The question is what happens to her now?" All eyes turned to the cell. Alara stood slowly. "I'm right here. You can ask me directly." Park approached the bars. "Your husband is gone. His value as leverage has evaporated, which means you're no longer useful as a guarantee of his behavior." "So what, you kill me?" "No, killing you would draw attention we don't need." Park's expression was calculating. "But keeping you costs resources with diminishing returns." "I can help you find him." "How?" "Because I know how he thinks, where he'd go, who he'd trust." Alara gripped the bars. "You said yourself, someone powerful is helping him, someone you didn't anticipate. I can help you identify who." "Why would you do that?" "Because he deserves to face consequences, because I want my life back, because—" Her voice broke. "Because I have nothing left except making sure he doesn't win." Park studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded to the guard. "Open it." The cell door swung wide. Alara stepped out on legs that trembled with relief and adrenaline. "You have one chance," Park said quietly. "Help us find your husband and whoever's protecting him. Do that, and you walk away from this with your life in a clean slate. Fail, and you go back in that cell until we determine whether you're worth keeping alive." "I understand." Do you? Park leaned closer. Because the people who broke Adrian out of custody, they're not amateurs. They're professionals with resources that suggest government involvement. Possibly American, possibly Korean, possibly someone else entirely. And if they're willing to stage a prison break in Seoul, they won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens their operation, including me, especially you. Park straightened. So when I ask if you understand, I'm not asking if you comprehend the words. I'm asking if you're prepared to die for this. Alara met his eyes, thought about Adrian free and running, thought about 12 years of being controlled, thought about the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become and the woman she could still choose to be. I'm prepared to live for it. That's more dangerous. Something flickered in Park's expression. Approval, maybe, or recognition. Then let's begin. They took her upstairs, not to a safe room or a cell, but to an operations center. Banks of monitors, computers, maps covering the walls. Min Jun's team was already working, tracking flights, running facial recognition, pulling security footage from every camera in Seoul. Singapore was a misdirect, Min Jun said, pulling up flight manifests. He got off at a layover in Bangkok. Disappeared into the city 2 hours ago. Bangkok? Park's expression hardened. That's not random. Someone's facilitating this. Someone with deep roots in Southeast Asia. Alara stared at the monitors. Bangkok. Adrian had been there once, 5 years ago. A work trip. He'd come back talking about the heat, the traffic, the chaos, and something else. Something he'd mentioned in passing. He met someone there, she said slowly. On that trip. A consultant. Said the guy was connected. Could facilitate things that wouldn't work through normal channels. A name? He never said. Just called him the broker. Alara closed her eyes, trying to remember. But he kept the business card. I saw it once in his wallet. Black card. Gold lettering. A symbol I didn't recognize. Minjun was already typing. Describe the symbol. A dragon eating its own tail, circular. The typing stopped. Minjun looked at Park. Ouroboros International. Park's face went stone. That's not possible. What is it? Alara asked. A private intelligence firm that operates in the gray space between legitimate security and organized crime. They broker deals, facilitate extractions, provide protection for people who can afford their fees. Park's voice was tight. And they have connections at the highest levels of multiple governments. So Adrian hired them to get him out of Seoul. No, Ouroboros doesn't work for individuals unless those individuals represent something larger. A client, an organization, a government entity. Park turned to Min Jun. Pull everything we have on Ouroboros operations in Seoul. Find out who their local clients are. The next 3 hours were a blur of information. Alara sat at a terminal, feeding Min Jun's team everything she could remember about Adrian's contacts, his trips, his patterns. Names from business cards she'd glanced at, cities he'd visited, conversations she'd half heard while pretending not to listen. Slowly, a picture emerged. Adrian hadn't been working alone. He'd been the face of an operation that stretched across 3 continents. Money flowing from American investors through Korean intermediaries into Southeast Asian development projects. Legal on paper, profitable for everyone involved. Except Adrian had been skimming, taking percentages he wasn't authorized to take, using his position to build his own private fortune. And when he got caught, when Park's organization started tightening the noose, he'd made a deal with someone bigger, someone who valued his knowledge more than his loyalty. Meridian Capital. Min Jun pulled up corporate records. His employer. They're not just an investment bank. They're a front for a much larger operation. Look at their ownership structure. The screen filled with shell companies, offshore entities, connections that spiderwebbed across the globe. At the center, Ouroboros International. Adrian works for them, Alara breathed. He's been working for them the whole time. Not works. Worked. Park's voice was grim. Past tense. Because they've extracted him, which means they've determined he's more valuable elsewhere, away from Seoul, away from us. So we lost. No, we adapted. Park pulled up a map of Bangkok. Ouroboros operates out of a building in the financial district. Heavy security, diplomatic protections,
untouchable by normal means. So what do we do? Park looked at her directly. We do something abnormal. The plan was insane. Alara knew it the moment Park explained it, but insane was all they had left.
Bangkok was 6 hours by plane. They left at dawn, Alara, Park, Minjun, and 4 others whose names she never learned. Private jet, no customs, no records. The city hit her like a wall of heat and noise when they landed. Different from Seoul's organized chaos, wilder, louder, more dangerous. They went directly to a safe house in a residential neighborhood. Modest? Forgettable. The kind of place that didn't draw attention. Ouroboros moves their high-value assets through a private terminal at the airport, Park explained, spreading blueprints across a table. They'll fly Adrian out within 48 hours. Our window is between now and then. To do what? To intercept him, to extract information about who he's really working for and what they want. Park's eyes were cold, and to make it very clear that stealing from us has consequences. You're going to kill him, only if necessary. Park tapped the blueprints. The terminal is guarded but not impenetrable. We go in fast, extract Adrian, disappear before Ouroboros can respond. That's not a plan. That's suicide. No. Suicide is doing nothing while the people who destroyed your life get away clean. Park leaned forward. This is justice. Messy. Dangerous. But the only kind available to people like us. Alara looked at the blueprints, at the guard positions, at the narrow window of opportunity. Where do I fit in this? You're the bait. Minjun's voice was flat. Adrian still cares about you. Maybe not love, but possession, control. If he knows you're in Bangkok, if he thinks you're trying to stop him, he'll make a mistake, and we'll be there when he does. How do we let him know I'm here? Park pulled out a phone. You call him. Tell him you know what he's doing. Tell him you're going to expose everything. Make him panic. He won't believe me. He doesn't have to believe you. He just has to react. Park handed her the phone. Make the call. Alara stared at the device. This was it. The final move. The last chance to hurt Adrian the way he'd hurt her, or to walk away, to disappear, to find some other way to build a life from these ashes. But walking away meant Adrian won, meant he got to escape consequences, meant 12 years of suffering ended with him free and her broken. She took the phone, dialed the number she'd called 1,000 times over 12 years. It rang once, twice. Alara, Adrian's voice, wary, tight. How did you get this number? I know where you are. I know who you're working for. I know everything. Silence. Then, you're bluffing. Ouroboros International, Bangkok. The private terminal at Suvarnabhumi Airport. She let each word land. You're being extracted. Flown somewhere they think I can't follow. Somewhere you can start over with all the money you stole. If you know all that, you know I'm untouchable. Nothing's untouchable. Not even you. Her voice hardened. I'm going to destroy you, Adrian. Everything you've built, everything you've stolen. I'm going to make sure the world knows exactly who you are. You can't watch me. She ended the call. The room was silent. Park nodded slowly. He'll run. He'll try to move up his extraction timeline, which means we have tonight. And if this doesn't work, then we all die trying. Park's smile was knife sharp. But at least we'll die on our feet instead of in cages. The operation launched at midnight. Alara wore black clothes Minjun provided, moved with the team through Bangkok's night streets. They approached the airport from the industrial side, avoiding main checkpoints. The private terminal sat isolated from the main building. Single story. High fence. 4 visible guards. Park's team moved like shadows. Alara watched from the car as they disabled the guards. Quick, silent, efficient. No shots fired. No alarms raised. Then Minjun was out of the car door. We're in. Stay close. Stay quiet. Inside the terminal was minimal. A waiting area. An office. A door to the tarmac where a private jet sat. Engines warming. Voices from the office. English. Arguing. Park moved to the door, kicked it open. Adrian spun around, face draining of color. Behind him, 3 men in suits. Ouroboros security. Their hands moved toward weapons. I wouldn't, Park said quietly. his own team's guns already trained on them. The standoff lasted 5 seconds. Then Adrian laughed. High, broken. You actually came. I didn't think you'd be that stupid. Where's your protection now? Alara stepped into view. Adrian's expression shattered. Alara, what? You shouldn't be here. Neither should you, but here we are. One of the Ouroboros men spoke, American accent, military bearing. This facility is protected under international agreements. You're committing an act of... Park shot him. Not lethal. Shoulder. The man went down screaming. We're past agreements, Park said calmly, gun still raised. Mr. Cross, you're coming with us. Like hell I am. The second shot went past Adrian's ear, so close it probably burned. That wasn't a request. Adrian's hands went up, shaking. Okay, just don't. Outside. Now. They moved toward the tarmac exit. The remaining Ouroboros men didn't follow. Smart. They'd call reinforcements, but that would take time. Time Park's team could use to disappear. But on the tarmac, floodlights suddenly blazed to life. A voice over a loudspeaker, Thai accented English. Drop your weapons. You are surrounded by Royal Thai police. This is your only warning. Alara's heart stopped. Park's jaw worked. Then he lowered his gun, gestured for his team to do the same. Adrian's laugh came wild and triumphant. Did you really think Ouroboros would leave me unprotected? Did you think... Park moved faster than thought. Gun up, pressed against Adrian's temple. Tell them to stand down or I end this right now. You won't. You need me alive. I need you useful. Alive is optional. Park's finger tightened on the trigger. Choose. The floodlights wavered. Someone was making a decision. Then a new voice cut through the night. Female. American. Familiar. Nobody's ending anything tonight. Caroline Webb stepped into the light. FBI credentials in one hand. The other hand empty but ready. Mr. Park. Mr. Cross. Mrs. Cross. She looked at each of them in turn. I believe we all need to have a conversation about how this situation resolves without anyone getting killed or arrested. Park didn't lower the gun. The FBI has no jurisdiction here. No. But the Thai government owes us considerable favors, and I just convinced them that everyone in this terminal is essential to an ongoing international investigation. Webb's smile was cold. So here's what happens next. You lower that weapon. We all walk onto that plane, and we have a very long conversation about who knew what and who's willing to testify about it. And if I refuse, then Thai police storm this terminal, arrest everyone, and tomorrow's headlines are about an international incident involving American citizens, Korean organized crime, and a dead investment banker. Webb's voice hardened. Trust me, nobody wants that story. The silence stretched. Then Park lowered the gun. Smart choice, Webb said. Now everyone move, slowly, toward the plane. Alara walked on numb legs, climbed the stairs into the private jet, sat in a leather seat that probably cost more than her first car. Adrian sat across from her, hands zip-tied now. Webb's people had secured him the moment Park holstered his weapon. Park and Min-jun sat farther back, under guard, not arrested, not free, somewhere in between. The plane lifted into Bangkok's night sky. Webb sat down next to Alara. You've had quite a week, Mrs. Cross. Is that what we're calling it? What would you call it? Alara looked at Adrian, at Park, at the wreckage of every choice she'd made since waking up alone in Seoul. Justice, she said quietly. Incomplete, messy, but mine. Webb nodded slowly. I can work with that. As the plane climbed toward cruising altitude, Alara stared out the window at the lights disappearing below. Somewhere down there was the woman she'd been, the woman who'd believed in marriage and stability and safety. That woman was gone. What remained was still being written. And for the first time in 12 years, Alara was holding the pen. The flight from Bangkok to Seoul took 4 hours. Alara spent every minute of it staring at Adrian across the cabin, watching him pretend to sleep with his eyes closed too tight, his breathing too controlled, his whole body radiating the kind of tension that came from knowing the performance was over. Caroline Webb sat 2 rows back, laptop open, building a case in real time. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times before, turning chaos into evidence, transforming lives into testimony. Park Ji-hoon and Min Jun occupied the rear section under the watchful eyes of two federal agents who looked like they'd been carved from the same granite as their expressions. Not prisoners, not free, waiting to see which category they'd fall into when the plane touched down. Nobody spoke. The silence had weight. Gravity. The pressure of everything unsaid pressing down until even breathing felt like effort. When the seatbelt sign finally illuminated, Alara felt nothing. No relief, no fear, just the hollow numbness of someone who'd run out of adrenaline 3 countries ago. Seoul's airport appeared through the window, lights arranged in perfect grids, order imposed on darkness. They landed smoothly, taxied to a private section far from the main terminals. A convoy of black SUVs waited on the tarmac. Webb stood, stretched, and addressed the cabin like a teacher calling attendance. "Mr. Cross, you're with Agents Morrison and Chen. Mr. Park, Mr. Kang, you'll ride with Agents Lee and Park. Mrs. Cross, you're with me." Adrian's eyes snapped open. "Where are you taking her? That's not your concern anymore." "She's my wife. She's a witness in a federal investigation. Your marital status is irrelevant." Webb's tone could have frozen water. "Move. Now." They descended into Seoul's pre-dawn cold. Alara watched Adrian being guided toward one SUV, his hands still zip-tied, his expensive shirt wrinkled and stained. He looked back once, his eyes finding hers across the tarmac. She looked away first. Webb's hand settled on her elbow. Not rough, not gentle, just directive. "This way." The SUV's interior smelled like leather and government efficiency. Webb slid in beside her. The door closed with a heavy thunk that felt final. "Where are we going?" "Safe house, embassy adjacent. You'll stay there while we process everything." Webb pulled out her phone, scrolled through messages. "You're looking at approximately 48 hours of debriefing, medical evaluation, psychological assessment. Then we determine next steps." "Next steps for what?" "For your life." Webb looked up. "You've been through significant trauma, Mrs. Cross. Your husband drugged you, abandoned you in a foreign country, forged your identity on criminal documents, and attempted to frame you for his crimes. That's not something you walk away from unchanged." Alara stared out the window at Seoul passing by. "I'm not the same person I was a week ago." "No, you're not." Webb's voice softened fractionally. "The question is who you want to become now." The safe house was exactly what the name suggested. Anonymous apartment in a secured building, guards at every entrance, cameras monitoring every approach. Comfortable. Sterile. The kind of place designed for people in transition between one life and another. A woman was waiting inside. 50s. Kind eyes, FBI credentials that identified her as a victim services coordinator. She introduced herself as Sarah Mitchell and immediately began the process of converting Alara from a person into a case file. Medical examination first. A doctor who asked questions about the drugging incident with clinical detachment. Drew blood. Took samples. Documented bruises Alara hadn't realized she'd acquired. Wrist from the guard she'd fought. Ankles from running barefoot through Seoul. A constellation of small injuries that mapped her week in shades of purple and yellow. Then food. Real food, not prison rations or safe house basics. Sarah had ordered from a Korean restaurant, bibimbap, kimchi, soup that steamed and smelled like comfort Alara didn't deserve to feel. She ate anyway, mechanically, fueling a body that had forgotten what normal felt like. Webb returned as she finished, sat across the table, opened a folder thick with documents. "Your husband is cooperating, fully, completely. He's providing testimony about Ouroboros International, Meridian Capital, and approximately 17 other entities involved in the money laundering operation." Webb pulled out a transcript. "He's also recanted every statement that implicated you, confirmed the forgeries, admitted to using you as an unwitting shield." Alara set down her spoon. "Why?" "Because his lawyers convinced him it's his only path to a reduced sentence. Because the evidence against him is overwhelming. Because—" Webb paused. "Because he asked to speak with you. And I'm here to determine if that's something you want." The room felt smaller suddenly. "He wants to see me?" "He claims he wants to apologize. To explain, to, quote, make things right. Webb's expression was neutral. I told him I'd ask, but you are under absolutely no obligation to agree. You owe him nothing. Alara looked at her hands. At the wedding ring she was still wearing, silver band worn thin from 12 years of pretending it meant something. When had she stopped noticing it was there? What happens if I say yes? Supervised meeting, federal facility, 30 minutes maximum, everything recorded. Webb leaned forward. But I need you to understand something, Mrs. Cross. Men like your husband are expert manipulators. Even in custody, even facing decades in prison, they will use any access, any opportunity to regain control of the narrative. If you see him, he will try to manipulate you. It's not personal, it's pathology. I know what he is.
Do you? Webb's voice was gentle. Because knowing intellectually and feeling it emotionally are very different things. And right now you're exhausted and traumatized and vulnerable, which makes you exactly the kind of target he's trained himself to exploit. Alara met Webb's eyes, saw genuine concern there, not the clinical detachment of an agent managing a witness. Something human. I want to see him, she said quietly. Not because I owe him anything. Not because I think he'll tell the truth. But because I need to look at him one more time and feel nothing. Webb studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. I'll be in the room with you the entire time. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't heard what he's going to say.
The federal facility was in Yongsan, a district that felt more American than Korean, with military bases and embassy buildings creating pockets of familiar territory. The building itself was unmarked, bureaucratic, designed to be forgotten the moment you left it. Webb walked Alara through security checkpoints, metal detectors, ID verification, down hallways that smelled like industrial cleaner and contained ambition. The interview room was small, table bolted to the floor, chairs that couldn't be weaponized, camera in the corner with a red light glowing steady. Adrian was already seated when they entered. His hands were cuffed to a bar on the table. He'd been given clean clothes, gray jumpsuit that erased his identity as effectively as any disguise, but his eyes were the same. Sharp, calculating, already working on the angles. He looked up when Alara entered. Something flickered across his face, genuine emotion or facsimile, she couldn't tell anymore. Alara, his voice cracked on her name. Thank you for coming. I didn't think you would. She sat across from him. Webb positioned herself by the door, close enough to intervene, far enough to give the illusion of privacy. Alara said nothing, just waited. Adrian's throat worked. I don't know where to start. Start with the truth. You've lied about everything else. He flinched, nodded. You're right. You're absolutely right. I've lied to you for most of our marriage, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it or sorry you got caught? Both. I know that's not what you want to hear, but it's honest. Adrian's hands twisted in the cuffs. I never wanted to hurt you. I got in too deep. Started making choices I couldn't take back. And every time I tried to get out, I was already too committed to stop. So you drugged me, stole my passport, left me in a foreign country with no resources. I panicked. I convinced myself it was the safest option, that if you were isolated, you'd be protected from the fallout when everything collapsed. His voice dropped. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Alara leaned back in her chair, studied him. This man she'd loved, or thought she'd loved, or convinced herself she loved because the alternative was admitting she'd wasted 12 years on a fiction. You forged my signature on criminal documents. Yes. You told federal investigators I managed your money laundering operations. Yes. You built an exit strategy that erased me from your future. Adrian's eyes closed. Yes. And now you want me to believe you're sorry? I don't expect you to believe anything. I needed you to hear it. From me. Not through lawyers or testimony or court documents. He opened his eyes. They were wet. I destroyed us. I destroyed you, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. You'll live with it in prison. I'll live with it free. Alara's voice was steady. That's not the same thing. I know. Silence settled, heavy, final. Then Adrian spoke again, softer. Do you remember the night I proposed, on the riverbank in Boston? Alara's chest tightened. Don't!
You were wearing that blue dress, the one you always said made you feel pretty, even though you were gorgeous and everything. And when I asked you to marry me, you cried. Happy tears. You said yes before I even finished the question. That person doesn't exist anymore. I know. I killed her. Adrian's voice broke completely. I took the woman I loved and I turned her into someone who had to become hard just to survive being married to me. And I hate myself for it. I hate what I did to you. I hate that I can't take it back. Alara felt something crack inside her chest. Not forgiveness, not sympathy, just the grief of watching someone she'd once believed in reveal themselves as fundamentally hollow. You didn't love me, she said quietly. You loved controlling me. There's a difference. Maybe. I don't know anymore. I don't know what was real and what was manipulation, and where one ended and the other began. Adrian looked at her directly. But I know this. You deserved better. You deserved someone who saw you as a partner instead of a possession, and I'm sorry I wasn't that person. So am I. More silence. The camera's red light blinked steady, recording everything, turning this moment into evidence. Finally, Alara stood. I hope you meant it. The testimony, the cooperation, all of it. Because if you didn't, if this is just another manipulation, it won't work. I won't save you. I won't protect you. I won't be your shield anymore. I know. Good. She moved toward the door, stopped, looked back one last time. Goodbye, Adrian. Alara, wait. But she was already leaving. Webb followed her out, closing the door on whatever Adrian was about to say. In the hallway, Alara's hands started shaking. Webb guided her to a bench, sat beside her. You okay? I don't know. Alara stared at the floor. I thought I'd feel something. Relief, or anger, or satisfaction, but I just feel empty. That's normal. You're grieving. For what? A marriage that was never real? For the version of it you believed in? For the person you were when you still had hope? Webb's voice was gentle. That loss is real even if the marriage wasn't. Alara nodded. Couldn't speak past the tightness in her throat. They sat in silence until she could breathe normally again. Then Webb said, There's someone else who wants to see you. Park Ji-hoon. He's requesting a meeting before we finalize charges. What kind of charges? That depends on several factors. His cooperation, his testimony, and whether certain witnesses, like you, are willing to confirm that you were coerced rather than complicit. Webb pulled out her phone, showed Alara a memo. He's offering information about Ouroboros International's operations in Asia, names, locations, financial structures, in exchange for immunity on everything except the kidnapping charge related to holding you in that cell. He still kidnapped me. Yes, he did. But he also kept you alive when multiple parties wanted you dead. The law allows for complexity in these situations. Webb pocketed the phone. It's your call. You can press charges, testify against him, watch him go to prison, or you can accept that he operated in a moral gray zone where keeping you prisoner was genuinely the safest option available. Alara thought about the cell, the apartment, the safe room, all the places Park had locked her in the name of protection. Then she thought about Adrian, about 12 years of a different kind of prison, one she'd walked into willingly because she hadn't recognized the bars. I'll meet with him, she said finally, but I'm not promising anything. Park Ji-hoon looked smaller in the federal interview room. Not physically, he was still the same man who'd commanded spaces with his presence. But something had diminished. The certainty. The absolute control. He stood when Alara entered. Mrs. Cross? Thank you for agreeing to this. She sat. Webb remained by the door again, watching. You have 15 minutes, Alara said. Talk. Park sat slowly. I owe you an apology for the methods I used, for the positions I put you in, for treating you as an asset instead of a person. You locked me in a cell. Yes, I did. Because 3 different organizations were actively trying to kill you, and that cell was the only place I could guarantee your safety. His expression didn't change. I won't pretend it was ethical, but it was effective. You're alive. Barely. Alive is alive, Mrs. Cross. There are a dozen women in Seoul who got involved in situations like yours and didn't survive. You did. That counts for something. Alara's jaw tightened. You want credit for not killing me?
No. I want you to understand that I operated within constraints you didn't see. Your husband stole from very dangerous people. Those people wanted blood. I gave them money instead. Your continued existence is evidence that I succeeded. At what cost? You held me prisoner, used me as leverage, turned me into a pawn in a game I didn't agree to play. Yes. Park leaned forward. And I'd do it again, because the alternative was your death. And despite what you think of me, I'm not a murderer. I'm a businessman who operates in spaces where law and ethics blur. That requires difficult choices. Choices you made for me, without asking. Would you have agreed if I'd asked? Elara had no answer for that. Park nodded as if she'd confirmed something. Your husband created this situation. I managed it. The FBI is capitalizing on it. We're all using you in different ways. The only difference is, I'm honest about it. You're a criminal. Yes. I facilitate transactions that exist in legal gray zones. I provide services to people who can't access them through legitimate channels. I profit from human desperation and institutional failure. Park's voice was flat. I'm also the reason you're sitting in this room instead of buried in an unmarked grave outside Bangkok. Morality is complicated, Mrs. Cross. I stopped pretending otherwise a long time ago. Elara stared at him. At this man who'd imprisoned her and protected her and treated her like currency and kept her breathing, trying to untangle which parts deserved condemnation and which deserved what? Gratitude? Understanding? What do you want from me? She asked finally. I want you to tell the truth, that I coerced you, that you provided information under duress, that you were a victim, not a participant. Park's eyes held hers. I want you to help me avoid a life sentence for crimes I committed while protecting you from your husband's consequences. And if I don't, then I go to prison. My organization collapses. And the people I was protecting you from will have no reason to maintain that protection. He paused. Your safety was guaranteed by my authority. Remove that authority and you become vulnerable again. It was a threat, subtle, wrapped in logic, but a threat nonetheless. Webb cleared her throat. Mr. Park, that sounds a lot like witness intimidation. It's a statement of fact, Agent Webb. Mrs. Cross's safety exists within a specific ecosystem. Disrupt that ecosystem and the safety dissolves. I'm not threatening her. I'm explaining consequences. Explain faster. You have 5 minutes left. Park looked at Elara. I'm asking you to be pragmatic. Your husband destroyed your life. I gave you tools to rebuild it. The methods were ugly, but the outcome is you're alive, free, and in possession of information that makes you valuable. That's more than most people get after what you endured. You want me to thank you. I want you to recognize that the world isn't divided into heroes and villains. It's divided into people who survive and people who don't. I helped you survive. Now I'm asking you to help me do the same. Elara stood. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. She left without looking back. Webb followed her into the hallway. What are you going to do? Webb asked. I don't know yet. Elara rubbed her face. Is he right? About the protection? Partially. His organization did shield you from immediate threats, but we can provide witness protection if needed. Relocation, new identity, resources to start over. In America? Wherever you want, within reason. Elara thought about that. America. Home. Except it wasn't home anymore. Home was the apartment she'd shared with Adrian. Home was the life she'd built around his needs. Home had been a fiction for longer than she'd admitted. Can I have time to decide? About everything? You have 72 hours. Then we need formal statements. Webb's expression softened. Mrs. Cross? Elara. You've been through more in 1 week than most people experience in a lifetime. Whatever you decide, make sure it's for you. Not for Adrian, not for Park, not even for justice. For you. The words settled somewhere deep. Elara nodded. They returned to the safe house. Sarah Mitchell had prepared tea. Actual Korean tea, the kind that smelled like earth and patience. Elara sat by the window and watched Seoul move below her. Millions of people living lives she'd never touch, problems she'd never solve, victories and failures that had nothing to do with her. She pulled off her wedding ring, held it up to the light. 12 years distilled into a circle of worn silver. She should feel something, should mourn or rage or grieve. Instead, she felt nothing except the faint relief of finally setting down a weight she'd carried so long it had become part of her skeleton. She placed the ring on the windowsill and walked away from it. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of statements and signatures and psychological evaluations that tried to reduce her trauma into diagnostic categories. Sarah Mitchell was patient. Webb was professional. The various doctors and lawyers and specialists treated her like a puzzle to be solved. Alara answered their questions, signed their documents, cooperated fully. And somewhere beneath the compliance, something new was growing. Not healing, that would take years if it came at all. But agency, choice, the understanding that she could decide what came next. On the third day, Webb returned with final paperwork. Adrian's pleading guilty to all charges: money laundering, fraud, identity theft, forgery. He's looking at 18 to 25 years. Webb set down the file. His lawyers are requesting that you submit a victim impact statement for sentencing. You're not required to do so. What would it change? Potentially nothing. Judges consider them, but aren't bound by them. It's more about giving you a voice in the process. Alara thought about that. A voice, after 12 years of silence. I'll write it, she said. Take your time. Sentencing isn't for another month. What about Park? We've accepted his cooperation agreement. He'll plead to reduce charges, probably serve 2 years maximum. His organization will be dismantled, but he'll survive. Webb paused. He asked me to tell you thank you for being pragmatic. Alara nodded. Felt nothing about that either. And me? What happens to me? That's entirely up to you. Webb pulled out a folder. We've established that you were a victim of your husband's crimes. No charges will be filed against you. Your record is clean. Your passport is valid. You're free to go wherever you want. Just like that? Just like that? Webb smiled slightly. Welcome to the rest of your life, Mrs. Cross. Or Ms. Vance, if you prefer your maiden name. The choice is yours. Alara Vance. She tested the name silently. It felt like putting on clothes she'd forgotten she owned. Familiar, but strange. Hers. There's one more thing, Webb said. Park Ji-hoon's organization maintains several accounts in your name as part of the protection agreement. We've frozen most of them pending investigation, but there's one, a personal account, that holds approximately $300,000. Clean money. Compensation for services rendered. Services rendered? I was a prisoner. You were a consultant who provided valuable intelligence under adverse conditions. The money is legally yours. We've verified the source. No criminal taint. Webb slid a bank statement across the table. You can refuse it if you want. Donate it. Whatever feels right, but it's yours. Alara stared at the number. $300,000. More money than she'd ever controlled in her life. Freedom denominated in currency. I'll keep it, she said quietly. I earned it. Yes, you did. Webb stood, extended her hand. It's been an honor working with you, Ms. Vance. I hope your next chapter is quieter. Alara shook her hand. Thank you for everything. Thank yourself. You survived. Not everyone does. Then Webb was gone. The safe house was quiet. Sarah Mitchell appeared with release paperwork and a gentle reminder that victim services would remain available if needed. By sunset, Alara was alone in a hotel room she'd chosen herself. Nothing luxury, nothing memorable. Just a clean room with a bed and a window and a door she could lock from the inside. She stood at that window and watched Seoul's evening lights begin to glow. This city that had witnessed her destruction and reconstruction, that had seen her at her weakest and her strongest and hadn't cared either way. She was free, truly, completely free. No husband, no captors, no handlers, just herself and a future she could write however she wanted. The weight of it was terrifying. 3 months later, Alara stood in a different city. Not Seoul, not New York. Somewhere in between, a coastal town in Vietnam where the ocean met sky in endless blue and tourists wandered through markets buying silk and stories. She'd rented a small apartment overlooking the water, spent her days walking beaches and her nights writing the victim impact statement she'd promised Webb. It had grown beyond a statement into something else, a memoir, a testimony, a reckoning with who she'd been and who she'd become. The writing was painful. Each page forced her to relive moments she wanted to forget. But it was also cathartic. Each word claimed agency. Each paragraph was proof she'd survived. Adrian's sentencing happened while she was in Vietnam. Webb sent her a message, 22 years. He'd looked small in the courtroom, broken. The judge had read Alara's statement aloud, 10 pages detailing 12 years of psychological abuse disguised as marriage. Adrian had cried. Alara felt nothing. Park's sentencing came a week later, 18 months. He'd maintained his composure throughout, accepted the judgment without protest. His lawyer issued a statement thanking all parties for their professionalism. Alara deleted the notification without reading it fully. These men no longer owned space in her head. She'd given them enough. They'd taken enough. The accounting was closed. On a Tuesday morning, 4 months after leaving Seoul, Alara sat in a cafe overlooking the South China Sea and received an email from a literary agent in New York. Someone had read an excerpt of her memoir that Webb had shared with a contact. They wanted to represent her. Thought there was a book in her story. Maybe more. Alara read the email 3 times. Then she closed her laptop and walked down to the beach. The sand was warm beneath her bare feet. The water was impossible blue. Tourists laughed in the distance. Life continuing, moving, indifferent to her trauma and her triumph in equal measure. She waded into the water up to her knees, let the waves push and pull, felt the sun on her face and the salt in her hair and the absolute terror and joy of not knowing what came next. Someone called out in Vietnamese, a vendor selling drinks from a cart. Alara waved him over, bought a coconut water, sat on the beach and drank it while watching fishing boats navigate the horizon. Her phone buzzed. Another email. The agent again. Excited, talking about book deals and speaking tours and turning trauma into testimony. Alara read it, considered it, then set the phone aside. There would be time for decisions, for next steps, for building whatever came after survival. Right now, she just wanted to sit on this beach and feel the sun and remember that she was alive. Not because someone allowed it, not because someone protected it, but because she'd fought for it, clawed for it, refused to be erased. She pulled out a small notebook, the kind tourists bought in markets, opened to the first page, started writing. Not the memoir, not testimony, just thoughts, observations, the beginning of something that belonged entirely to her. The sun climbed higher, the day stretched long and golden. Alara wrote until her hand cramped. Then she closed the notebook and walked back into the water. She dove under a wave, came up gasping, laughing. Somewhere in Seoul, Adrian was counting years in a cell. Park was learning to exist with diminished authority. Webb was moving on to the next case. But Alara was here, in water that tasted like salt and freedom, in a moment that belonged only to her. She floated on her back and looked at the sky, infinite and indifferent and impossibly beautiful. 12 years ago, she'd said yes to a man on a riverbank, had believed in promises and partnership and permanence. Now she was saying yes to herself, to uncertainty, to the terrifying possibility that she could build something real from the wreckage of everything false. The water held her. The sun warmed her. The world turned beneath her with absolute indifference to whether she sank or swam. She chose to swim, not because it was easy, not because someone told her to, but because she'd learned something in Seoul that no amount of trauma could erase. Survival wasn't the ending. It was the permission to begin. Later, as evening painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Alara returned to her apartment, showered the salt away, made simple dinner, rice and vegetables from the market, ate slowly, tasted everything. Her laptop sat on the table, the agent's email still waiting for a response. Alara opened a new message, typed carefully. Thank you for your interest. I'd like to discuss this further. But I need to be clear about something. This isn't just a story about what was done to me. It's about what I did to survive, about the choices I made when every option was terrible, about becoming someone I didn't recognize in order to stay alive. If you're interested in that story, the complicated, morally ambiguous, sometimes ugly truth of survival, then let's talk. If you're looking for a simple victim narrative, I'm not your author. Let me know which version you want. She hit send before she could second guess it. The response came within an hour. 3 words. The real one. Alara smiled, closed the laptop, walked to her window. Below, the ocean moved in rhythms older than memory. Above, stars were beginning to appear in the deepening blue. She'd survived Adrian, survived Seoul, survived the cages people built and the ones she'd built herself. What came next was unknown, uncertain, entirely hers to discover. She thought about the woman she'd been, the one who'd woken up alone in a hotel suite and thought the world had ended. That woman was gone. What remained was harder, scarred, unfinished, but alive, breathing, building. Alara Vance stood at her window and watched night claim the ocean, felt the weight of everything she'd endured and everything she'd become. She'd thought restraint would keep her safe, had believed making herself smaller would protect her. She'd been wrong about everything. Restraint hadn't saved her, it had nearly destroyed her. But when she'd finally chosen it, when restraint became strategy instead of surrender, it had become the sharpest weapon she possessed. Adrian had mistaken her quiet for weakness, had assumed her compliance meant defeat. He'd never understood that the most dangerous thing in the world is a woman who's stopped being afraid of her own strength. The ocean breathed below. The stars wheeled above. And somewhere between water and sky, Alara Vance began the long work of becoming someone she could recognize in the mirror. Not perfect, not healed, not safe, but free. Finally, absolutely, terrifyingly free. And that, more than survival, more than justice, more than any revenge she could have imagined, was victory. She turned from the window, sat down at her laptop, opened a blank document, and began to write her own story, in her own words, on her own terms. The beginning was painful, the middle was chaos, the ending was still unwritten, but every word was hers, every sentence was choice, every paragraph was proof that she'd taken back what Adrian had tried to erase, her voice, her story, her life. She wrote through the night, through exhaustion, through the ghosts of everything she'd survived. And when dawn finally broke over the South China Sea, painting the world in gold and promise, Alara Vance was still writing, still choosing, still building, still becoming. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And for the first time in 12 years, she was the one holding the pen.